Sherlock Holmes and the Case of the Woman Who Boarded a Train That Never Existed. Chapter 1. The Passenger from Platform 9. In all my years of companionship with Mr. Sherlock Holmes, I encountered many strange and perplexing affairs. Some involved murder, others theft, and a few touched upon matters so curious that they seemed to belong more properly to the realm of fantasy than reason. Yet among all those adventures, none began with a mystery more bewildering than the case of the woman who boarded a train that never existed. The events occurred during the autumn of 1893. London lay beneath a blanket of cold mist that drifted through the streets like pale smoke from some enormous unseen furnace. The gas lamps along Baker Street glowed dimly through the fog, casting yellow circles upon the pavement. I had spent the morning attending patients in Kensington and returned to our lodgings at 221B Baker Street shortly after 4 o'clock. Upon entering our sitting room, I found Holmes stretched languidly upon the sofa. A violin rested across his chest. His eyes were closed. For a moment I believed him asleep. Then he spoke. "You have seen 3 patients since noon, Watson. One was a retired naval officer suffering from gout. Another was a young woman with a persistent cough. The third paid you only half your normal fee." I removed my hat and stared at him. "You astonish me." His eyes opened. "No, my dear fellow. You astonish yourself by continuing to leave evidence everywhere." I laughed. "And what evidence have I left today?" Holmes sat upright. "The naval officer's tobacco is upon your sleeve. The lady's perfume lingers faintly upon your cuff. As for the reduced fee, your expression suggests professional irritation mixed with sympathy. The combination generally indicates a patient of limited means. You truly are impossible." "Not impossible, merely observant." Before I could reply, Mrs. Hudson entered carrying a silver tray. "A visitor to see you, Mr. Holmes." Holmes glanced toward the door. "Male, approximately 60, wealthy, nervous." Mrs. Hudson blinked. "He has not yet come upstairs, sir. Nevertheless, those are the facts." A moment later, heavy footsteps sounded upon the staircase. The door opened. A tall gentleman entered. He possessed silver hair, a neatly trimmed beard, and expensive clothing. Most noticeable of all was the anxiety etched upon his face. Holmes smiled faintly. "Good afternoon." "Please, take a seat." The man stopped abruptly. "You know me?" "No." "Then how?" "You are wealthy because your tailoring is exceptional. You are 60 because your beard reveals age despite recent dye. You are nervous because you have twisted your gloves nearly to destruction." The gentleman sank into a chair. "My name is Sir Malcolm Ashcroft." Holmes inclined his head. "A pleasure." Sir Malcolm produced a handkerchief. "I have come because Scotland Yard believes my niece has run away." "And you disagree?" asked Holmes. "Entirely." Holmes steepled his fingers. "Tell us everything." The man drew a long breath. "My niece, Miss Eleanor Ashcroft, disappeared 3 nights ago. Age? 26. Occupation? She assists me in managing several charitable foundations." Holmes nodded. "Continue." "On Tuesday evening she informed the household that she intended to travel from London to Brighton the following morning." "Alone?" "Yes." "And did she leave as planned?" "According to witnesses, yes." Sir Malcolm swallowed. "That is where the impossible part begins." Holmes's eyes brightened slightly. I knew that expression. It appeared whenever a problem promised genuine intellectual challenge. "What occurred?" he asked. "Several people saw Eleanor enter Charing Cross Station." "How many?" "At least 4. "Reliable witnesses?" "Completely." Holmes nodded. "Go on." "One ticket clerk sold her a ticket." "Excellent." "A porter carried her luggage." "Good." "A station inspector observed her waiting upon platform 9. Holmes leaned forward. "And then?" "At precisely 9:21 in the morning, she boarded a train." The room grew silent. Sir Malcolm's voice dropped. "At least that is what everyone claims." Holmes narrowed his eyes. "What do you mean?" Sir Malcolm reached into his coat. He withdrew several folded papers. Because there was no train scheduled to depart from platform 9 at 9:21. I felt a chill. Holmes remained motionless. Sir Malcolm spread the documents across the table. These are the official railway records. Holmes examined them. The platform was closed for maintenance. Exactly. There were no departures. None. And yet witnesses saw her board a train. Yes. Holmes looked up. Describe the train. Sir Malcolm laughed bitterly. That is another difficulty. The witnesses disagree? Completely. He pointed to a statement. The porter insists it was green. Another. The inspector says dark blue. Another. The ticket clerk describes black carriages. Holmes said nothing. The only point upon which they agree is this. Sir Malcolm's finger trembled slightly. They all saw Eleanor step aboard, and after that she vanished. The fog pressed against the windows. Somewhere below, a carriage rattled along Baker Street. Holmes studied the documents in silence. At last he spoke. When did you first learn of her disappearance? The following evening. And what action was taken? Scotland Yard investigated immediately. Results? Nothing. Holmes stood. That alone revealed the extent to which the problem interested him. He paced slowly before the fireplace. A woman enters a station. Correct. Purchases a ticket. Yes. Waits upon a platform. Yes. Boards a train that officially does not exist. Precisely. And is never seen again. Sir Malcolm nodded. Holmes stopped pacing. Most intriguing. I recognized the dangerous gleam in his eyes. Whenever Holmes used those words, events rarely remained simple for long. Sir Malcolm leaned forward desperately. Can you help me? Holmes remained silent for several seconds. Then he crossed to the window. The fading daylight illuminated the sharp outline of his profile. Finally he spoke. Tell me, Sir Malcolm. Yes? Did your niece have enemies? The man hesitated. Not that I know of. Debts? No. A romantic attachment? Another hesitation. A gentleman had expressed interest. Name? Mr. Julian Mercer. Holmes turned. Interesting. Why? Because you hesitated. Sir Malcolm looked uncomfortable. I disliked the man. Why? He was charming. I smiled slightly. That hardly constitutes a crime. It does when one cannot determine whether the charm is genuine. Holmes's expression sharpened. A useful observation. Sir Malcolm rose from his chair. Will you take the case? Holmes walked slowly back toward the table. His gaze lingered upon the railway records, then upon the witness statements, finally upon a small detail I could not identify. A detail that seemed suddenly to fascinate him. When he looked up again, his eyes were shining. Yes. Relief flooded the man's face. Thank heavens. Holmes picked up one of the papers. Because there is something here that Scotland Yard has overlooked. Sir Malcolm stared. What? Holmes smiled. The smile was slight, almost predatory. I shall not say just yet. What have you found? My dear sir, said Holmes, if I am correct, your niece did not disappear after boarding the train. Sir Malcolm went pale. What do you mean? Holmes folded the document and slipped it into his pocket. I mean that the mystery began considerably earlier than anyone suspects. Outside, the evening fog thickened across London. Inside Baker Street, a puzzle had begun whose solution would lead us through railway tunnels, aristocratic secrets, false identities, and a deception so elaborate that even Sherlock Holmes would later describe it as one of the most ingenious schemes he had ever encountered. At that moment, however, we knew only one thing. A young woman had boarded a train that never existed, and Sherlock Holmes intended to discover where it had taken her. Chapter 2. The Ticket Without a Destination. The following morning yawned grey and damp, with a persistent drizzle drifting across London beneath a sky the colour of old lead. At 8:30, Holmes and I found ourselves approaching Charing Cross Station. The great iron and glass structure loomed through the mist like some gigantic mechanical cathedral. Steam hissed from locomotives. Porters hurried along the platforms with carts piled high with luggage. Travellers clustered beneath umbrellas, while vendors shouted newspapers and railway schedules. Holmes paused before entering. "What do you observe, Watson?" I glanced around. "A busy station," Holmes sighed. "Yes, but what else?" "A great many passengers." "Indeed, and several railway employees." "My dear Watson, if I required confirmation that a railway station contains railway employees, I should consult a child rather than a doctor." I laughed. "You ask impossible questions." "Not impossible, merely neglected." His eyes swept across the building. "Every place leaves a signature. A crime scene leaves several." Without another word, he entered. We were met inside by Station Superintendent Harold Fenwick, a stout gentleman with a magnificent moustache and an expression that suggested several sleepless nights. "You are Mr. Sherlock Holmes?" "I am. Thank goodness." Fenwick removed his hat and wiped his brow. "The entire affair has become a nightmare, so I understand." The superintendent led us through a maze of corridors toward his office. "I've answered questions from Scotland Yard, railway inspectors, company directors, and newspaper reporters." "And none discovered anything useful?" Holmes asked. "Nothing." Holmes smiled faintly. "That is encouraging." Fenwick looked bewildered. "Encouraging? Certainly. If everyone has failed, then the field remains clear for original thinking." The superintendent appeared uncertain whether this was reassuring. Inside the office, Holmes seated himself opposite the desk. "Let us begin with Miss Eleanor Ashcroft's ticket." Fenwick immediately opened a drawer. I anticipated that request. He withdrew a leather-bound ledger and several documents. The ticket clerk recorded the transaction. Holmes leaned forward. "Excellent." The superintendent pointed to an entry. 9:11 in the morning. Holmes studied the page. "Destination?" Fenwick hesitated. "That is the strange part." "Go on." The clerk couldn't remember. I frowned. Surely he sold hundreds of tickets. "Exactly," said Fenwick. "Ordinarily that would explain everything." Holmes remained focused upon the ledger, but something prevented the destination from being recorded. "Yes. Why?" Fenwick spread his hands helplessly. "No one knows." Holmes examined the page carefully. Then his eyes narrowed. "Interesting." I recognized the tone immediately. "What is it?" I asked. Instead of answering, Holmes slid the ledger toward me. "Observe." I looked. The entry appeared perfectly ordinary. Date, time, ticket sold, nothing more. "I see nothing unusual." "Precisely." I looked up. "That makes no sense." Holmes tapped the page. "Every ticket sold that morning includes a destination." I examined the ledger again. He was right. Dozens of entries filled the page. Brighton, Canterbury, Dover, Hastings. Every passenger destination had been recorded, except Eleanor Ashcroft's. Someone forgot. Perhaps. His expression suggested he doubted it. "Or perhaps," he continued, "someone wished us not to know." The possibility hung heavily in the air. Fenwick shifted uneasily. "Are you suggesting criminal interference?" "I am suggesting nothing yet." Holmes closed the ledger. "Now I should like to speak with the ticket clerk." A few minutes later, we were introduced to Arthur Bell, a thin young man with nervous eyes. He looked terrified. Holmes immediately adopted a gentler tone. "Please relax, Mr. Bell." "I'm trying, sir." "You sold Miss Ashcroft her ticket." "I believe so." "You believe?" The young man swallowed. Everything became confused afterward. "Tell me exactly what happened." Bell concentrated. "She arrived at my window shortly after 9. "Alone?" "Yes." "Describe her." "Dark coat, grey hat, black gloves." "Anything distinctive?" Bell hesitated. She seemed distracted. "In what way?" "As though she were thinking about something else entirely." Holmes nodded. "And then?" "She requested a ticket." "To where?" The clerk grimaced. "I cannot remember." "Can you remember anything about the conversation?" Bell thought for several moments. Then his eyes widened. There was a question. What question? She asked whether the train would be punctual. Holmes became very still. A specific train? Yes. Which train? I don't know. Holmes's fingers tapped lightly against the desk. Anything else? Bell shook his head. No. Did she appear frightened? No. Excited? Perhaps. Why perhaps? Because she smiled. Holmes looked up sharply. She smiled? Briefly. That seemed to interest Holmes enormously. When the interview ended, we stepped back into the station. You find something significant in that? I asked. Possibly. The smile? Among other things. We proceeded toward platform 9. The platform stood nearly deserted. Repairs had been completed since Eleanor's disappearance, but portions still showed signs of recent construction. Holmes walked slowly along its length. His eyes moved continuously. Tracks, benches, signs, walls. Nothing escaped examination. At one point he knelt beside the platform edge. "What are you looking for?" I asked. "There are moments when you become deliberately mysterious." "My dear Watson, the world itself is mysterious. I merely translate." A railway inspector joined us. His name was Leonard Graves, the man who claimed to have seen Eleanor board the train. He proved to be a serious fellow in his 40s. Holmes wasted little time. "You observed Miss Ashcroft here?" "Yes." "At what time?" "Approximately 9:20. Was she alone?" "No." Holmes's head snapped upward. "No?" The inspector blinked. "I assumed Scotland Yard mentioned that." "They did not." "Then they should have." Holmes's attention sharpened immediately. "Tell me everything." Graves pointed toward the far end of the platform. "She was speaking with a gentleman." My pulse quickened. "A gentleman?" I repeated. "Yes." Holmes folded his arms. "Describe him." Graves frowned. "I wish I could." "You cannot." "Not clearly." Holmes stared. The inspector appeared genuinely frustrated. "That's the strange part." "Explain." "He seemed perfectly ordinary." Holmes said nothing. "Average height?" "Yes." "Average build?" "Yes." "Brown coat?" "Anything else?" "No." The inspector shook his head. "I remember Miss Ashcroft perfectly." "But not the man standing beside her." "Exactly." Holmes's eyes gleamed. For the first time that day, genuine excitement appeared upon his face. What happened next? A train arrived. The train that officially did not exist. Yes. And the gentleman, he boarded first. Then Miss Ashcroft followed. And after that, the train departed. Holmes fell silent. The inspector shifted uncomfortably. "Have I said something important?" Holmes looked toward the tracks stretching into the fog. "Perhaps you have said the most important thing yet." When we were finally alone again, I could contain myself no longer. "The man, indeed. Why would Scotland Yard overlook him?" "They did not overlook him." "Then why?" "Because he is impossible." I stared. "What do you mean?" Holmes glanced back toward the platform. "Mr. Graves remembers Miss Ashcroft in extraordinary detail." "Yes, but cannot remember the face of the man beside her." "True, and yet he spoke with her long enough to attract attention." I nodded. Holmes smiled slowly. "A man remembered by nobody is often more dangerous than a man remembered by everyone." A whistle echoed across the station. Steam drifted over the tracks. For several moments, Holmes stood motionless. Then he began walking briskly toward the exit. "Where are we going?" "To visit Miss Ashcroft's residence." "Why?" "Because," said Holmes, "our missing woman purchased a ticket whose destination vanished from the records." He raised a finger. "That is curious." Then a second finger. She smiled before disappearing. A third finger. "And she was accompanied by a man whose face no witness can recall." Holmes's expression hardened. "My dear Watson, I suspect Miss Eleanor Ashcroft did not stumble into danger. You think she planned something?" "I think she expected something." "What?" Holmes stepped into the fog-covered street. "That is precisely what we must discover." As a hansom cab approached, I noticed the familiar look upon his face. The hunt had begun, and somewhere in London, hidden beneath layers of deception, lay the answer to a question that grew stranger with every hour. Why had a woman willingly boarded a train that should never have existed? Chapter 3. The Locked Writing Desk. By the time Holmes and I arrived at the Ashcroft residence, the afternoon sky had darkened into a gloomy curtain of clouds. Sir Malcolm Ashcroft occupied an imposing townhouse in Belgravia, one of those stately Victorian homes whose polished exterior suggested wealth, tradition, and respectability. Yet as our cab rolled to a halt before the building, I was struck by the peculiar stillness surrounding it. A household in mourning often possesses a silence unlike any other. Servants walk softly, doors close gently, conversations end when strangers approach. The Ashcroft residence carried precisely that atmosphere. Sir Malcolm greeted us personally at the entrance. "You have discovered something." "Perhaps," said Holmes. That answer appeared to satisfy him no more than it ever satisfied me. We were led upstairs to Eleanor Ashcroft's rooms. "Nothing has been touched," Sir Malcolm assured us. "Excellent." Holmes entered immediately. I followed. The room reflected refinement without extravagance. Books lined several shelves. A writing desk stood beside the window. Fresh flowers occupied a porcelain vase. Several framed photographs rested atop a cabinet. Everything appeared orderly, perhaps too orderly. Holmes remained near the doorway. He did not move. He simply observed. Those who knew him poorly often misunderstood his methods. They imagined constant action, relentless searching, dramatic discoveries. In reality, Holmes frequently spent long periods doing absolutely nothing, except seeing. His eyes travelled slowly across the room, the fireplace, the carpet, the curtains, the furniture. Every detail was absorbed and catalogued. Finally, he crossed to a bookshelf. "What were Miss Ashcroft's interests?" he asked. Sir Malcolm considered. "Literature." Holmes examined the titles. "History." "Yes." "Astronomy." "Very much so." "A curious selection." "How?" Holmes removed a volume. "Most people read to escape reality." He held up the book. "Your niece read to understand it." Sir Malcolm smiled faintly. "That sounds like Eleanor." Holmes replaced the volume. His attention shifted toward the writing desk. "Did she spend much time here?" "Every evening." "Writing letters?" "Frequently." The desk itself was elegant mahogany. Its surface appeared immaculate. Yet Holmes stopped abruptly. "Interesting." I glanced over. "What is it?" He pointed. "Observe the dust." I looked. At first I noticed nothing unusual. Then I saw it. A faint rectangular outline upon the polished surface. Something had rested there for a considerable period. Something recently removed. "A box?" I suggested. "Possibly." Holmes measured the outline with his eyes. 8 inches by 4. Could it have been moved after her disappearance? Sir Malcolm shook his head. "No." "You are certain?" "Absolutely." Holmes crouched beside the desk. His fingers traced the edges carefully. Then he examined the drawers. One opened, then another, then another. The fourth refused to move. "Locked." Sir Malcolm nodded. "Yes." "Do you possess the key?" "No." "Was it always locked?" "Not to my knowledge." Holmes sat back. His expression brightened. Whenever Holmes appeared pleased by a locked object, I knew trouble lay ahead. "May I?" Without waiting for permission, he removed a thin instrument from his pocket. 30 seconds later, the drawer clicked open. Sir Malcolm stared. "I sometimes forget how many laws your methods violate." Holmes smiled. "Only the boring ones." Inside lay several documents, a notebook, a sealed envelope, and a collection of railway timetables. I immediately looked toward Holmes. His eyes narrowed. "Railway timetables?" Sir Malcolm appeared surprised. "Eleanor rarely travelled. That makes them considerably more interesting." Holmes opened the notebook. The pages contained neat handwriting, dates, appointments, observations, routine entries. Nothing remarkable, at least not initially. Holmes turned page after page, then stopped. The smile vanished from his face. Ah, I recognized that sound. What have you found? Instead of answering, he handed me the notebook. A single sentence had been written across an otherwise blank page. If the blue lantern appears, I must not hesitate. I read it twice, then 3 times. What does it mean? I have no idea. Sir Malcolm leaned forward. I've never heard her mention a lantern. Holmes continued studying the page. When was this written? No idea. The words appeared entirely isolated. No explanation accompanied them. No surrounding notes. Nothing. Merely the sentence itself. A warning, or perhaps an instruction. Holmes carefully replaced the notebook. Then he examined the sealed envelope. The paper bore no address, no name, nothing. After obtaining Sir Malcolm's permission, he opened it. A single sheet rested inside. We gathered around. At first glance it appeared blank. Then Holmes tilted it toward the light. Faint pencil marks became visible. A rough sketch, a railway platform, a clock, a signal post, and beneath them a handwritten number, 9:21, the exact time of Eleanor's disappearance. Sir Malcolm looked genuinely shaken. What in heaven's name is this? Holmes did not answer. His attention remained fixed upon the drawing. Finally, he folded it carefully. Did Scotland Yard search this drawer? No. Why not? It was locked. Holmes laughed softly, a regrettable limitation in their investigative philosophy. We spent another hour examining the room. No obvious evidence emerged, yet Holmes seemed increasingly convinced that something significant had been uncovered. As we prepared to leave, he suddenly stopped beside the fireplace. His gaze settled upon a framed photograph. A young woman stood beside a garden gate. Elegant, confident, intelligent, Eleanor Ashcroft. Holmes lifted the photograph. What is this? Sir Malcolm approached. Taken last summer. Holmes turned it over, then became motionless. I immediately knew he had discovered something. What is it now? Without speaking, he handed me the frame. A handwritten inscription occupied the back. To Eleanor. Trust the timetable, not the station. J.M. I looked up sharply. J.M. Sir Malcolm's face paled. Julian Mercer. The suitor? I asked. Yes. Holmes's eyes glittered. When was this photograph given to her? A year ago. Interesting. He returned the frame to its place. Very interesting. We departed shortly afterward. Outside, evening shadows stretched across Belgravia. The gas lamps had begun to glow. For several blocks Holmes remained silent. At last I spoke. Well? Well, what? You have spent the entire day collecting clues while refusing to explain any of them. Holmes smiled. A perfectly accurate summary. What does it all mean? He considered. Let us review. He raised one finger. A missing destination. A second. A mysterious companion. A third. A hidden railway sketch. A fourth. A cryptic warning concerning a blue lantern. A fifth. And a message advising Miss Ashcroft to trust a timetable rather than a station. I frowned. They seem unrelated. On the contrary, his voice grew thoughtful. They are connected so neatly that I begin to suspect deliberate design. Design by whom? That remains uncertain. We crossed a narrow street crowded with evening traffic. For several moments Holmes appeared lost in thought. Then he spoke again. Tell me, Watson. Yes? What would you do if you wished to create a train that did not exist? I laughed. I shouldn't know where to begin. Exactly. Holmes's eyes reflected the glow of a nearby lamp. Neither should anyone else. A chill passed through me. You think the train was real? I think something was real. What? Holmes stopped walking. For a moment he stared into the gathering darkness. Then he said quietly, I believe Miss Eleanor Ashcroft intended to board that train. You mean voluntarily? Entirely voluntarily? Then why disappear? Holmes turned toward Baker Street. That, my dear Watson, is the question. He resumed walking. But a far more troubling question has just occurred to me. What is that? His expression hardened. If Eleanor planned the journey, the fog swirled around us. Why did she hide those plans from everyone, including the man who supposedly loved her? For the first time since the case began, I sensed that we were approaching not merely a disappearance, but a conspiracy. And somewhere behind that conspiracy stood a figure whose influence stretched far beyond a railway platform and a missing woman. Someone who had left almost no trace. Almost. Chapter 4. The Man Nobody Could Remember. The following morning found Holmes in a state of uncommon activity. When I descended to breakfast, I discovered him surrounded by newspapers, railway maps, shipping schedules, and 3 separate city directories. His violin lay neglected upon the sofa, while tobacco smoke drifted through the sitting room in dense blue clouds. This alone indicated the seriousness of the case. Holmes ignored food whenever his mind became fully engaged. "Good morning," I said. He did not look up. "Mercer. What about him?" "Everything about him is wrong." I seated myself. "You have not even met him yet." "Precisely. That hardly seems sufficient evidence." Holmes finally glanced up. "Watson, whenever a man appears connected to a mystery and leaves behind almost no useful information, I become interested." He tossed a newspaper across the table. I examined it. A society column. Nothing unusual. "What am I looking at?" "The absence." I sighed. "There are moments when conversation with you becomes an exhausting experience." Holmes smiled faintly. "Julian Mercer has moved comfortably among London's upper circles for nearly 3 years." "Yes." "He attends dinners." "Apparently." "Charity events." "Indeed." "Private gatherings." "So it would seem." Holmes leaned forward. "And yet he appears nowhere." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "No interviews. No public speeches. No business announcements. No family records." His eyes narrowed. "It is as though he stepped into existence 3 years ago." That observation gave me pause. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Mrs. Hudson announced our visitor. A tall gentleman entered. At once I recognized him. At least, I believed I did. He matched Sir Malcolm's description perfectly. Handsome, well-dressed, confident without appearing arrogant. His brown hair was neatly groomed, his expression calm. Nothing about him seemed remarkable. Indeed, that was precisely what struck me. He appeared almost deliberately ordinary. "Mr. Julian Mercer," said Holmes. The man inclined his head. "Mr. Holmes." His voice was pleasant, educated, controlled. He sat opposite us. "I understand you are investigating Eleanor's disappearance." "We are." A shadow crossed Mercer's face. "I hope you succeed." His concern appeared genuine. Yet Holmes watched him with the intensity of a scientist observing a rare specimen. "You were acquainted with Miss Ashcroft?" A faint smile. "I hope to become considerably more than acquainted." "You intended marriage?" "Eventually." Holmes folded his hands. "And did she share that intention?" Mercer hesitated. "A gentleman should not presume." "A detective must." The smile faded. "Yes." Holmes nodded. "Tell us about your relationship." For nearly 20 minutes, Mercer answered questions. He spoke clearly, confidently, without visible nervousness. He described dinners, walks through Hyde Park, conversations regarding literature and travel, future plans. Everything sounded perfectly reasonable, perhaps too reasonable. At last, Holmes asked, "When did you last see Miss Ashcroft?" "The evening before her disappearance." "At what time?" "Approximately 7. "Where?" "Her uncle's residence." "What did you discuss?" "Nothing unusual." Holmes remained silent. Mercer shifted slightly. Then Holmes spoke again. Did you ever advise Miss Ashcroft to trust a timetable rather than a station? For the first time, Mercer's composure cracked. Only briefly, a flicker, a fraction of a second, yet Holmes saw it, so did I. What an unusual question, Mercer said. You did not answer it. No. The response came quickly. Too quickly. Holmes leaned back. You are certain? Quite certain. Holmes smiled. A curious thing. Mercer's eyes narrowed. Why? Holmes reached into his pocket. He withdrew the photograph from Eleanor's room. The inscription faced upward. To Eleanor. Trust the timetable, not the station. J.M. For several seconds Mercer stared. His face lost colour. Then he recovered. A gift from years ago. You wrote it? Yes. Then your previous answer was false. Mercer looked away. Perhaps I had forgotten. Holmes remained silent. The silence proved far more uncomfortable than any accusation. Finally, Mercer spoke. It was merely a joke. A joke. An inside remark. Concerning what? I no longer remember. Holmes nodded slowly. I see. Yet his expression suggested the exact opposite. The interview continued. Mercer provided no additional revelations. When he finally departed, I turned immediately toward Holmes. Well? Holmes walked to the window. What did you think of him? Intelligent? Yes. Charming? Certainly. Concerned about Eleanor? Holmes remained silent. I hesitated. Unless that concern was an act. Perhaps. He watched the street below. Did anything else strike you? I considered. Not particularly. Holmes smiled. Then allow me to demonstrate. He crossed to the table. Mr. Mercer claims his relationship with Eleanor was serious. Yes. He claims they discussed marriage. Correct. He claims affection. Naturally. Holmes picked up a notebook. Then why did he refer to her 12 times as Miss Ashcroft and never once as Eleanor? I blinked. The realization struck me instantly. Good heavens, he was right. Throughout the entire conversation, Mercer had maintained an oddly formal distance. The language felt wrong, subtly wrong, yet unmistakably wrong. He spoke like a businessman discussing a colleague. Exactly. Holmes sat down. The emotions were correct. The words were correct. The memories were correct. His gaze sharpened. But the feeling was absent. A chill crept over me. You think he lied? I think he rehearsed. Before I could respond, a knock sounded at the door. Mrs. Hudson entered carrying a telegram. Holmes opened it. As he read, his expression changed instantly. The casual interest vanished. In its place appeared something far more dangerous. Focus. What is it? I asked. He handed me the telegram. The message came from Inspector Lestrade. Urgent. Second incident connected to Ashcroft case. Meet immediately. I looked up. A second incident? So it appears. Within 30 minutes we were seated in a cab racing toward Scotland Yard. Lestrade awaited us in his office. His face looked unusually grave. Thank heavens you've come. What happened? Holmes asked. The inspector tossed a document onto the desk. A body. The room fell silent. My stomach tightened. A murder? I asked. Possibly. Lestrade pointed toward the report. Male, approximately 50, found beside the railway tracks south of London. Holmes examined the paper. What connection does this have to Miss Ashcroft? Lestrade hesitated. Then he slid another item across the desk. A leather wallet, recovered from the dead man's pocket. Holmes opened it. Inside rested several papers, a railway pass, a photograph, and a folded note. Holmes unfolded the note. For the first time since the investigation began, genuine surprise appeared upon his face. What is it? I demanded. Without speaking, he handed me the paper. I read the message, then read it again. The words seemed impossible. If anything happens to me, tell Sherlock Holmes that Platform 9 was only the beginning. The note bore a signature, Leonard Graves, the railway inspector who had witnessed Eleanor board the mysterious train. I stared. But we spoke with him yesterday. Precisely, said Lestrade grimly. And this morning someone killed him. The fog outside pressed against the windows of Scotland Yard. For several moments nobody spoke. Then Holmes folded the note carefully. His eyes had acquired that distant look I knew so well. The look that appeared whenever separate fragments suddenly began forming a pattern, a dangerous pattern. At last he spoke. Lestrade. Yes? When was the note written? We don't know. Find out. The inspector nodded. Holmes rose. What are you thinking? I asked. He turned toward the door. A witness remembers a train that should not exist. A woman disappears. A suitor tells half-truths. And now a railway inspector dies carrying a warning intended specifically for me. His expression hardened. My dear Watson, the situation has changed. How? Holmes opened the door. We are no longer investigating a disappearance. The corridor beyond seemed suddenly darker, more ominous. Now, said Sherlock Holmes quietly, we are investigating a murder. And somewhere in London, someone had decided that the truth was worth killing for. Chapter 5. The Dead Inspector's Warning Murder possesses a remarkable quality. It has a way of stripping away illusions. A disappearance may be explained by accident, voluntary flight, misunderstanding, or coincidence. Murder allows no such comforts. Someone acts, someone plans, someone decides, and someone dies. As Holmes and I departed Scotland Yard that evening, I could already perceive a change in his demeanour. The puzzle had become sharper, more dangerous, and therefore, in Holmes's eyes, more interesting. The fog had thickened considerably. Gas lamps glimmered like distant stars through the grey haze. For several blocks Holmes remained silent. Then he spoke. Leonard Graves knew something. Obviously. More than that. His pace quickened. He knew something specific. You base that upon the note? No. Then what? The timing. I frowned. Holmes continued walking. Yesterday, Graves speaks with us. Yes. Today he is dead. True. Either he learned something after our meeting, Holmes paused, or our visit convinced someone he already knew too much. The possibility chilled me. You believe he was watched? I believe everyone connected to this case may be watched. Those words lingered unpleasantly in my thoughts. By the following morning, Holmes had already begun reconstructing Graves's final day. We visited the dead inspector's residence shortly after 9. The house stood in a modest neighbourhood south of the Thames. Nothing about it suggested wealth, nothing suggested secrets, yet experience had taught me that secrets rarely announce themselves. A widow answered the door. Mrs. Graves proved to be a quiet woman in her 40s, whose grief had not yet fully transformed into acceptance. Holmes adopted an unusually gentle tone. My deepest condolences. Thank you. She invited us inside. The sitting room remained untouched. A newspaper rested beside an armchair. Reading glasses sat atop a small table. The ordinary details of ordinary life. The details murder leaves unfinished. Holmes questioned her carefully. When did you last see your husband? Yesterday morning. Did anything seem unusual? She hesitated. Perhaps. Holmes waited. He appeared distracted. In what way? He kept checking the clock. Holmes nodded. Did he mention a meeting? No. An appointment? No. What about concerns regarding the Ashcroft investigation? Mrs. Graves looked surprised. He spoke about that constantly. Holmes's attention sharpened. Please explain. He couldn't stop talking about the missing woman. Why? He said something about a mistake. Holmes leaned forward. What mistake? I don't know. Her voice trembled slightly. He never explained. What exactly did he say? She thought carefully, then repeated the words. The mistake wasn't the train. Holmes became very still. The mistake wasn't the train. Yes. What else? He said the wrong thing disappeared. For several moments neither Holmes nor I spoke. The statement sounded absurd. Yet I could see immediately that Holmes considered it important. "What disappeared?" he asked. Mrs. Graves shook her head. "He never said." Holmes rose. "May we examine your husband's study?" A few minutes later we entered a small room overlooking the street. Bookshelves lined the walls. Railway manuals occupied most of them. Schedules, maps, technical references, everything appeared meticulously organized, which made the missing space on one shelf particularly noticeable. Holmes spotted it instantly. Something was removed. Mrs. Graves looked surprised. "How did you know?" "The dust," he pointed. A rectangular gap interrupted the otherwise uniform layer. What was there? A notebook. Holmes turned. "What sort of notebook?" "My husband's personal journal." "When did it disappear?" "I don't know." She looked genuinely alarmed. "I assumed the police had taken it." Holmes exchanged a glance with me. Lestrade had mentioned no such thing. "Did anyone enter this room after your husband's death?" "Only the police." "Anyone else?" "No." Holmes' expression darkened. When Mrs. Graves left momentarily to prepare tea, he lowered his voice. "Someone removed that journal." "You think the killer?" "Possibly." He examined the shelf more closely, then the desk, then the wastebasket. Most investigators would have ignored the latter. Holmes emptied it onto the carpet. Crumpled papers scattered everywhere. Receipts, notes, fragments, nothing obvious. Then Holmes froze. "What is it?" He picked up a torn scrap. Only 3 words remained visible. "Blue lantern tonight." My pulse quickened. The blue lantern. Indeed, the cryptic message from Eleanor's notebook. The same phrase. The same mystery. Holmes slipped the fragment into his pocket. Now we have confirmation. Confirmation of what? That the lantern was real. He looked toward the window. And that Graves knew about it. By midday, we had reconstructed the inspector's final movements. According to witnesses, Graves left work shortly after 6 o'clock. He boarded a tram, exited near Blackfriars, and disappeared for nearly 3 hours. Only later was his body discovered beside the railway tracks. "What happened during those 3 hours?" I asked. "That," said Holmes, "is the correct question." The answer arrived sooner than expected. At a small public house near Blackfriars, the proprietor recognized Graves immediately. "Yes, sir. He was here." "When?" "Yesterday evening." "Alone?" The proprietor hesitated. "No." Holmes looked up. "Who accompanied him?" "A woman." I felt a surge of excitement. "Can you describe her?" The man frowned. "Dark clothing." "Anything else?" "Not much." "Her face?" "Covered by a veil." Holmes sighed softly. "A veiled woman in London. Hardly distinctive." "What did they discuss?" "Couldn't hear." "How long did they remain?" 10 minutes. And then they left separately." The proprietor pointed toward the street. "The woman first, then Graves." Holmes considered this carefully. "Did either seem nervous?" "Very." That answer appeared to satisfy him. Outside, we retraced the route. The narrow streets around Blackfriars wound like a maze through warehouses and railway arches. Holmes moved steadily forward, occasionally stopping, occasionally examining the ground. At one intersection he abruptly halted. "What is it?" He pointed upward. A railway signal tower rose above nearby buildings. Atop it hung a lantern, blue glass. I stared. "Good heavens!" Holmes smiled faintly. "There is our lantern." The signal tower belonged to an abandoned freight line. Operations had ceased years earlier. The tracks remained, the trains did not. At least officially, we approached. The structure stood deserted, its windows boarded, its doors chained shut. Yet Holmes appeared fascinated. He circled it twice, then stopped near a rusted maintenance gate. "What do you see?" I examined the area. "Nothing." "Look again." This time I noticed it. Fresh mud. Footprints. Several sets. Recent. Very recent. Someone had entered the abandoned property. Holmes crouched, his expression sharpened. Interesting. What? He pointed. One set of prints belonged to heavy boots, another to lighter footwear, a third appeared unmistakably feminine, and all led through the gate, toward the old railway line. No prints emerged, only entered. A strange sensation crept over me. What are you thinking? Holmes rose slowly. I am thinking that abandoned places rarely remain abandoned. We followed the tracks for nearly half a mile. Eventually they disappeared beneath a long brick tunnel. Darkness waited beyond the entrance, cold, silent, uninviting. Holmes stopped. The tunnel seemed to fascinate him. For several moments he stared without speaking. Then he pointed toward the wall. A symbol had been painted there, simple, almost childish. A blue lantern. My heartbeat quickened. The same sign. Yes. Holmes approached. Beneath the lantern symbol appeared a sequence of letters. BL 921. The exact time of Eleanor Ashcroft's disappearance. For the first time since the case began, I sensed we had stumbled upon something tangible. Not speculation, not testimony, evidence. Real evidence. Holmes traced the painted letters carefully. Then his expression changed. The excitement vanished, replaced by concern. A rare occurrence. What is it? He stepped back. We are late. Late for what? Whatever happened here? His gaze travelled into the darkness of the tunnel. Very late. As we turned to leave, a movement caught my eye. A figure. Far down the track, watching us. I spun around. The person disappeared instantly into the shadows. Holmes! He had seen it too. Without hesitation, he sprinted forward. I followed. Our footsteps echoed through the tunnel. The darkness swallowed everything. Yet by the time we reached the far end, the watcher had vanished, gone completely. No sound, no trace. Nothing. Holmes stood breathing heavily. For several moments he scanned the empty railway cutting beyond. Then he spoke quietly. Someone expected us. A cold wind drifted through the tunnel, and they did not want to be seen. We returned toward London as evening approached. The mystery had acquired new dimensions. A murdered inspector, a secret meeting, a blue lantern, an abandoned railway line, and hidden observers moving through the shadows. Yet the most troubling discovery came only after we reached Baker Street. Waiting upon our table lay a sealed envelope. No stamp, no address. Someone had delivered it by hand. Holmes opened it. Inside rested a single sheet of paper. No signature. No explanation. Only one sentence. Stop searching for the woman. Search for the train. Holmes read the message twice. Then slowly smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. It was the smile that appeared when an adversary finally revealed intelligence. "My dear Watson," he said quietly, folding the paper. "At last." At last what? Holmes placed the note beside the fire. At last, someone has decided to speak with us. Chapter 6. The Secret Railway. The anonymous warning transformed the investigation. Until that point, Holmes and I had pursued fragments, witness statements, cryptic messages, suspicious deaths, and half-hidden clues. Now, for the first time, someone directly involved had reached out. Not to threaten us. Not exactly. But to redirect us. Stop searching for the woman. Search for the train. The distinction fascinated Holmes. "It reveals a great deal," he remarked the following morning, while studying the note beneath a magnifying lens. "How?" "Because the writer assumes the train and the woman are separate mysteries. Perhaps they are." Holmes shook his head. "No." "Then why write such a message?" He smiled. "That is precisely why it interests me." The note itself offered few clues. The paper was ordinary, the ink unremarkable, the handwriting deliberately disguised. Yet Holmes examined it for nearly an hour. Finally he rose. "Come, Watson." Where are we going? Underground. I sighed. Whenever Holmes gave one-word answers, experience suggested a long and uncomfortable day awaited me. By noon, we were seated opposite a retired railway engineer named Frederick Alderton. The meeting took place in a cluttered office near Paddington. Maps covered the walls. Blueprints overflowed from cabinets. The room smelled faintly of oil and dust. Alderton possessed the appearance common among engineers, a combination of intelligence, practicality, and permanent irritation. Holmes wasted little time. "Mr. Alderton, I require information concerning abandoned railway lines." The old engineer raised an eyebrow. "Specific lines?" "All of them." Alderton laughed. "That would take a month. Then let us begin with the unusual ones." The engineer studied Holmes carefully. "I've heard of you. My condolences." That earned a reluctant smile. "What sort of unusual line?" Holmes produced a sketch of the blue lantern symbol. For the first time, Alderton's expression changed. Only slightly, but enough. "You've seen it before," Holmes said immediately. The engineer cursed softly. "I shouldn't have reacted, but you did." A long silence followed. Finally, Alderton leaned back. "Where did you find that?" "Near an abandoned freight tunnel." The engineer rubbed his chin. "I haven't seen that symbol in years." My pulse quickened. "What does it mean?" Alderton looked uncomfortable. "Officially? Yes. Nothing. And unofficially?" The old man sighed heavily. "There used to be stories." Holmes leaned forward. "What sort of stories?" "Railway stories." His tone suggested that such tales were generally ridiculous. Workers talked about hidden routes. Hidden routes? Unused tunnels? Private tracks? Special trains? I exchanged a glance with Holmes. "Special trains for whom?" I asked. Alderton shrugged. "Nobody knew. Smugglers? Possibly. Government operations? Perhaps. Criminal organizations? Some believed so." Holmes remained silent. The engineer continued. "The stories were nonsense, of course." "Of course." Yet Holmes's tone suggested otherwise. "What was the significance of the blue lantern?" Alderton hesitated, then spoke quietly. "It meant a train wasn't listed." I stared. "What?" "A blue lantern signaled an unscheduled movement." The room fell silent. Even Holmes appeared intrigued. "Explain." The engineer folded his arms. "Normally, trains operate according to published timetables. Naturally. But occasionally special arrangements occur. Military transports, private charters, emergency operations." Holmes nodded. "And the blue lantern?" "It identified traffic invisible to the public." The implication struck me immediately. A train could exist, and simultaneously not exist. At least on paper. Holmes stood. "Thank you, Mr. Alderton." The engineer frowned. "You're not telling me what this concerns." "No, and that means trouble. Almost certainly." That afternoon, Holmes secured access to railway archives. For 6 exhausting hours, we examined records spanning nearly 20 years. Thousands of pages, schedules, maintenance reports, construction plans, inspection documents. Most proved useless, yet Holmes persisted. By evening, success finally arrived. "Watson." I looked up. His finger rested upon a faded blueprint. "What do you see?" I moved closer. The diagram showed railway lines south of London. Most were familiar. One was not. A narrow branch diverged unexpectedly, then vanished. "What's this?" "A very good question." The branch line appeared only briefly. A notation accompanied it. "Temporary access route, authorized personnel only." "What does that mean?" Holmes smiled. "It means someone built a railway line and preferred not to discuss it." The route connected directly with the abandoned freight tunnel containing the blue lantern symbol. My heartbeat quickened. "You think this is our secret railway?" "Possibly." "Can we follow it?" "Certainly." "When?" "Tonight." I stared. "Tonight?" "Naturally. It may be dangerous." "Then we should not delay." His logic, while entirely characteristic, offered little comfort. Shortly before midnight, We returned to the abandoned tunnel. Fog drifted across the tracks. The city seemed strangely distant. Even London's familiar sounds had faded. The tunnel entrance loomed before us like the mouth of some enormous beast. Holmes carried a lantern. I carried a revolver. Experience suggested my contribution would prove more useful. The tracks extended into darkness. We followed them carefully. Every footstep echoed. Every sound seemed amplified. The atmosphere possessed a peculiar quality, as though the tunnel itself remembered secrets. After nearly 20 minutes, Holmes stopped. "Listen." I obeyed. At first I heard nothing. Then, a faint metallic sound. Far ahead, barely audible, yet unmistakable. A railway sound. My blood ran cold. "Good heavens!" Holmes nodded. "You hear it?" "Yes." The sound came again. A distant clank, then another, then silence. We continued forward. The tunnel curved gradually. The darkness thickened. Then suddenly, Holmes extinguished his lantern. "What are you doing?" "Quiet." His voice dropped to a whisper. "Look ahead." I peered into the gloom. For several moments I saw nothing. Then a pale blue glow appeared. Faint, distant, hovering within the darkness. A lantern, blue, exactly as described. The mysterious signal, the symbol, the warning, the clue hidden throughout the case. We approached cautiously. The glow grew brighter, and then the tunnel opened. I stopped dead. Before us lay something extraordinary. A hidden platform. My breath caught. It stretched along one side of the tunnel. Small, concealed, entirely absent from official railway maps. Old benches stood nearby. A waiting area, signal equipment. Even ticket markings remained visible. The place had once been active. Perhaps recently. Perhaps still. Holmes examined everything rapidly. His excitement was unmistakable, remarkable. I nodded. It was the only word suitable. A railway station hidden beneath London. A station nobody officially acknowledged. A station connected to a woman who had vanished. Suddenly Holmes froze. "What is it?" He pointed. Fresh footprints. Several sets. Recent. Very recent. No more than a few hours old. Someone had been here. Not yesterday, not last week. Today. Then I saw something else. Tracks. Fresh wheel marks upon the rails. My pulse quickened. The rails gleamed. Polished. Used. Recently used. Realization struck both of us simultaneously. Holmes looked toward me. I looked toward him. Neither spoke. The conclusion required no words. A train had passed through this hidden station. Recently. Very recently. Then a new sound emerged from deep within the darkness beyond. Low. Distant. Growing steadily louder. A vibration trembled through the rails. The platform seemed to hum softly beneath our feet. I felt my stomach tighten. Holmes's eyes widened. For the first time in the entire investigation, genuine surprise crossed his face. "Watson." His voice was barely audible. "Yes?" The vibration intensified. Metal groaned somewhere ahead. Then came the unmistakable sound neither of us had expected to hear. A locomotive whistle. Far down the tunnel. Approaching. Holmes stared into the darkness. The blue lantern swung gently above us, and somewhere beneath London, a train that officially did not exist was coming toward us. Chapter 7. The Train in the Darkness. For several seconds neither Holmes nor I moved. The rails vibrated beneath our feet. The distant whistle echoed through the tunnel. Then came the rhythmic clatter of wheels. Steady, unmistakable, approaching. Every instinct urged caution. Yet every instinct Sherlock Holmes possessed urged curiosity. His eyes gleamed in the darkness. "My dear Watson," he said softly, "we are about to witness something extremely interesting." I tightened my grip upon my revolver. Or extremely dangerous. Often the same thing. The sound grew louder, closer. The hidden platform trembled faintly. The blue lantern above us swayed back and forth. Then At last, a beam of light appeared around the distant curve, a locomotive headlamp. For a brief moment I simply stared. Against all logic, against every official record, against everything we had been told, a train was coming. Holmes stepped behind a rusted signal box. I joined him. From our concealed position we watched the impossible unfold. The locomotive emerged slowly from the darkness. It was unlike any passenger train I had previously seen. The engine appeared old, much older than the rolling stock attached behind it. The carriages themselves had been painted a dull grey. No railway insignia, no company markings, no identifying numbers, nothing. The train seemed deliberately anonymous. It rolled silently into the hidden station, then stopped. Steam drifted through the underground chamber. For several moments nothing happened. Then a carriage door opened. A man stepped onto the platform. He wore a dark overcoat. A hat pulled low over his face. Another followed, then a third. All carried small leather cases. None spoke. None lingered. They moved with quiet purpose toward a passageway leading away from the station. Holmes observed every detail. His expression had become intensely focused. The passengers disappeared through an iron door at the far end of the platform. The door closed behind them. Silence returned. The train remained, waiting, as though expecting someone else. Then Holmes gripped my arm. "Look!" A figure appeared in one of the carriage windows. A woman, only briefly, just a glimpse. Yet I immediately understood why Holmes reacted. The profile matched the photograph. The dark hair, the elegant posture, the shape of the face. Eleanor Ashcroft. My pulse leapt. Good heavens! The woman vanished from sight. The curtain moved slightly, then became still. "Was it her?" I whispered. Holmes never looked away from the train. "I believe so. She's alive." "Perhaps." The answer startled me. "What do you mean, perhaps?" "Because if that was Eleanor, she is either a passenger," his voice hardened, "or a prisoner." Before I could reply, movement caught my attention. Another individual had emerged from the train. This one was different. Taller, older, confident. He walked with the easy authority of a man accustomed to obedience. Even from a distance I sensed intelligence. Dangerous intelligence. The stranger paused beneath the blue lantern. For a moment the light illuminated his features. Then he turned and disappeared through the same iron door. Holmes's eyes narrowed sharply. "You recognize him?" "Not precisely. But there is something familiar." The train remained motionless for another minute. Then a whistle sounded. The doors closed. Steam billowed. Slowly the locomotive began moving again. The carriages disappeared into the darkness beyond the station. Within moments it was gone. Only silence remained, and the faint smell of coal smoke. Holmes emerged from hiding immediately. We crossed the platform. The iron door awaited us, locked. Naturally, Holmes examined it. "Recently used. Can you open it?" "Probably." He withdrew his tools. Less than a minute later, the lock surrendered. The door creaked open. Beyond lay a narrow corridor. Brick walls, electric lamps, fresh footprints. The passage extended deeper underground. Neither of us spoke. The discovery itself seemed astonishing enough. A hidden railway station, a concealed corridor, unidentified passengers, and possibly Eleanor Ashcroft. At length Holmes nodded. Forward. The corridor twisted repeatedly, occasionally branching, occasionally descending. Its construction appeared expensive, deliberate, professional. Whoever built it possessed considerable resources. After nearly 10 minutes, we reached another door. Unlike the first, this one stood partially open. Voices drifted through the gap. Holmes motioned for silence. We approached carefully. The room beyond resembled an office. Several men stood around a large table. Maps covered the walls, railway maps, shipping maps, even international routes. One voice spoke, calm, authoritative. Everything proceeds according to schedule. Another responded, the Ashcroft matter created complications. The first voice laughed softly, only temporary complications. My heart pounded. We were finally hearing the truth, at least part of it. A third man spoke. What about the detective? Silence followed. Then the first voice answered. Sherlock Holmes will eventually understand. The calm confidence in that statement unsettled me more than a threat would have. Another voice spoke. And when he does, the reply came immediately. Then he will be too late. Holmes remained motionless, listening, analyzing, memorizing. Inside the room, papers rustled. Someone moved, then another remark drifted through the doorway. The girl remains useful. Every muscle in my body tightened. The girl, Eleanor. They were discussing Eleanor. The first voice continued. Once the transfer is complete, she becomes irrelevant. Holmes suddenly leaned closer. His expression changed. Not surprise, recognition. I saw it instantly. He knew the speaker, or believed he did. The realization disturbed him. A rare occurrence. Then disaster struck. A floorboard creaked beneath my foot. The sound seemed deafening. Instant silence filled the room beyond. I cursed inwardly. Then a voice called, "Who's there?" Holmes reacted instantly. "Run!" The door flew open. Shouts erupted behind us. We sprinted down the corridor. Footsteps thundered in pursuit. The underground passage transformed into a maze. Left, right, another turn, another staircase. Voices echoed everywhere. "They went this way. Stop them. Don't let them reach the tunnel." We raced forward. My lungs burned. The sounds behind us grew closer. Then Holmes suddenly seized my sleeve. "This way." A narrow maintenance passage branched from the corridor. We plunged inside. The opening proved barely wide enough. Several moments later, we emerged onto an elevated service platform overlooking the hidden station. Below, men flooded the area, searching, shouting, looking everywhere except upward. Holmes remained perfectly still. After several tense minutes, the pursuit moved elsewhere. Silence gradually returned. Only then did I breathe normally again. That was unpleasant. Holmes appeared distracted. "What did you hear?" I asked. His eyes remained fixed upon the station below. "Enough." "Enough for what?" "Enough to confirm several suspicions." He fell silent, then added quietly, "And enough to create a new one." "What suspicion?" For several moments he did not answer. At last he spoke. "The voice." "The leader's voice?" "Yes." "You recognized it?" Holmes nodded slowly. The expression upon his face troubled me. It was not triumph, it was concern, deep concern. "Who was it?" The answer came reluctantly, almost unwillingly. "I cannot be certain." "Then tell me your suspicion." Holmes looked toward the darkness where the train had vanished, then back toward the hidden office. Finally he spoke. "If I am correct." He paused. "Then Julian Mercer is not the mastermind behind this conspiracy." A chill passed through me. Someone else? Someone far more dangerous. The underground station seemed colder suddenly, darker, more threatening. Who? Holmes's gaze hardened. The one man nobody has considered. And for the first time since the case began, I sensed that the true enemy had finally stepped out from the shadows, even if we did not yet know his name. Chapter 8. The Forgotten Passenger. We did not leave the hidden railway immediately. That fact alone may seem surprising. Any reasonable man, having narrowly escaped discovery by an unknown conspiracy operating beneath London, would likely have retreated at once. Sherlock Holmes was not a reasonable man. He was an extraordinary one. And extraordinary men often possess a dangerous relationship with caution. For nearly 20 minutes after our escape, We remained concealed upon the elevated service platform overlooking the secret station. Below us, the search continued. Men carrying lanterns moved through the shadows. Doors opened and closed. Occasional voices echoed through the underground chamber. Yet Holmes appeared unconcerned. Instead, he observed, studied, measured, calculated. At length he spoke. "Watson." "Yes?" "What was the most important statement we overheard?" I considered. "The girl remains useful." A significant remark, but not the most important. "Once the transfer is complete?" Also significant. I frowned. "Then what?" Holmes smiled faintly. "The phrase 'according to schedule.'" I stared. "Why?" "Because schedules belong to systems." He pointed toward the tracks below. "Railways operate according to schedules." "Naturally." "So do shipping companies." "Yes." "So do commercial enterprises." I nodded. Holmes's gaze sharpened. "Criminal organizations generally do not." The observation struck me immediately. He was right. The hidden railway appeared organized with remarkable precision. Everything possessed structure, procedure, planning. The operation felt less like a gang and more like an institution, a troubling distinction. Eventually the station emptied. The search parties departed. The underground platform fell silent. Only then did Holmes motion for movement. We descended carefully, crossed the tracks, and approached the office we had observed earlier. The door remained unlocked. Perhaps our pursuers had assumed nobody would dare return. If so, they underestimated Sherlock Holmes. The office contained maps, ledgers, and filing cabinets. A large clock occupied one wall. A telegraph machine rested upon a desk. Everything appeared professional, efficient, almost bureaucratic. Holmes immediately began searching, not randomly, systematically. Each drawer, each shelf, each document. I assisted where possible, though experience had taught me that my discoveries generally amounted to a fraction of his. For nearly half an hour we found nothing decisive. Then Holmes froze. His hand rested upon a leather ledger. "What is it?" He did not answer. Instead, he opened the book. Names filled the pages. Dates, times, destinations, passenger records. My pulse quickened. A passenger list. Indeed, the entries stretched back several years. Hundreds of names, perhaps thousands, most meant nothing to us. Yet Holmes examined each page with growing intensity. Then suddenly he stopped. His eyes narrowed. "Extraordinary." I moved closer. "What have you found?" He pointed. One name, a single name among hundreds. Yet its significance struck me instantly. Eleanor Ashcroft. The entry appeared 3 weeks before her disappearance. I stared. "Impossible." Holmes nodded slowly. "Quite. Because the date preceded her alleged boarding of the train by 3 weeks. According to the ledger, Eleanor had already travelled upon the secret railway, long before she supposedly vanished. The realization stunned me. Then she knew about this place, beyond question. But how? Holmes turned another page. His expression darkened. "That is not the most interesting discovery." I followed his gaze. Another name. This one produced an even stronger reaction. Sir Malcolm Ashcroft. For several seconds I could not speak. Eleanor's uncle. The man who hired us. The man who reported her disappearance. The man who claimed ignorance. His name appeared repeatedly. Multiple journeys, multiple dates, all carefully recorded. My heartbeat accelerated. Good heavens! Holmes remained silent. The implications were obvious. Sir Malcolm had lied. Not merely once, repeatedly, deliberately, and about matters central to the investigation. I looked toward Holmes. "What does it mean?" He closed the ledger thoughtfully. "It means our client knows considerably more than he admitted." Before I could respond, another detail caught my attention. A final name appeared near the bottom of the page. Julian Mercer. 3 entries, all within the past year. The room seemed suddenly smaller, more oppressive. Every principal figure in the case appeared connected to the railway. Eleanor, Mercer, Sir Malcolm, all recorded, all involved, yet all telling different stories. Holmes copied several pages into his notebook, then continued searching. A few minutes later, he discovered a locked cabinet. Inside rested dozens of folders, financial records, correspondence, shipping manifests. Most appeared routine, until Holmes found a collection of photographs. He spread them across the desk. I examined them carefully. Many depicted passengers, men, women, families, businessmen, aristocrats, workers, people from every level of society. What are these? I suspect records. Of whom? Holmes turned over one photograph. Numbers appeared on the back. No names, only numbers. The same pattern appeared throughout the collection. Passengers? I suggested. Perhaps. One photograph immediately caught my attention. A young woman, dark hair, intelligent eyes, Eleanor Ashcroft. There could be no doubt someone had photographed her here, inside the secret railway operation. And not as a captive, she faced the camera directly. Calm, confident, even smiling. The image destroyed several assumptions at once. This changes everything. Yes, Holmes studied the photograph closely. She came willingly. The conclusion seemed unavoidable. The Eleanor in the photograph was not frightened, not coerced, not imprisoned. She appeared entirely comfortable. Then Holmes noticed something else. He lifted the image nearer the lamp. Interesting. What now? He handed me the photograph. A small detail appeared in the background, partially obscured, easy to overlook, yet unmistakable. A calendar. The date visible upon it. 3 months before Eleanor's disappearance. I stared. 3 months. Precisely. She had been visiting this railway for months. At minimum, the implications multiplied rapidly. The missing woman had not stumbled into a conspiracy. She had participated in it, or investigated it, or infiltrated it. Yet which possibility was correct remained unclear. Then a sound interrupted us. Footsteps. Distant. Approaching. Holmes reacted immediately. Someone's coming. We extinguished the lamp. Darkness swallowed the room. Moments later, voices echoed outside. 2 men entered. We remained hidden behind filing cabinets. Neither intruder noticed us. One carried a lantern, the other a stack of papers. Their conversation drifted through the darkness. The transfer happens tomorrow. Are all arrangements complete? Almost. The second man hesitated. What about the girl? My attention sharpened instantly. Again Eleanor. The first man laughed quietly. She's become a problem. Then why not remove her? A pause followed. Then came the answer. Because the director still believes she can be persuaded. The director. A new figure. A title. Perhaps the true mastermind. The second man lowered his voice. And if she refuses? The reply arrived coldly. Then she follows Graves. My blood ran cold. Leonard Graves. Murdered. Silenced. The meaning was unmistakable. Eleanor Ashcroft was alive. For now. But in grave danger. The men departed several minutes later. Only when their footsteps faded completely did Holmes move. His expression had hardened considerably. Well? He slipped the passenger ledger beneath his coat. We finally possess certainty. About what? Eleanor Ashcroft lives. Relief washed over me. Yet Holmes did not appear relieved, only concerned. That is good news. Perhaps. His tone suggested otherwise. I frowned. What troubles you? He looked toward the office door. The word persuaded. What about it? It implies disagreement. I considered. Then understanding dawned. You think she turned against them? Possibly. After working with them? Possibly. The situation grew increasingly complex. Eleanor appeared neither innocent victim nor willing conspirator. Something had changed. something significant, and that change may have cost Leonard Graves his life. We left the hidden station shortly thereafter. The journey back to Baker Street passed largely in silence. Holmes spent most of it studying the copied passenger records, again and again, searching for patterns, connections, meaning. At last, shortly before dawn, he closed the notebook. "I have made a serious mistake." The statement startled me. Holmes rarely admitted mistakes. What mistake? He stared into the fire. "The wrong question." I waited. When this case began, everyone asked where Eleanor Ashcroft went. Naturally, a foolish question. He looked up. His eyes reflected the flames. "The correct question is why she wanted access to the railway in the first place." The room fell silent. For several moments neither of us spoke. Then Holmes added quietly, "And I believe tomorrow's transfer will provide the answer." "Tomorrow?" "Yes." He placed the ledger upon the table. Among the entries, one had been circled repeatedly. A shipment, a destination, a scheduled movement, the very transfer we had overheard. I examined the notation, then felt a chill run through me. The destination was not London, not Manchester, not Liverpool, not any city at all. Instead, it consisted of three simple words: final passenger transfer, no location, no explanation, only a date, tomorrow. And whatever occurred during that transfer had become important enough to kill for. Chapter 9. The Director. I have often observed that Sherlock Holmes became most dangerous when confronted by a mystery that appeared impossible. Ordinary investigators sought answers within the boundaries of accepted facts. Holmes questioned the boundaries themselves. The morning following our discovery of the passenger ledger found him seated before the fire at Baker Street, surrounded by notes gathered throughout the investigation. The room resembled a battlefield. Maps covered chairs, documents occupied the carpet, timetables were pinned across the walls. The entire case seemed to exist physically around him. For nearly an hour he spoke to nobody. Then suddenly he rose. "I know why Eleanor joined them. I nearly spilled my coffee." "You do?" "At least I know what she was searching for." "Which was?" Holmes crossed to the wall. His finger traced a series of names copied from the railway records. Passengers. Hundreds of them. Many ordinary. Some remarkable. Several connected by nothing obvious. Or so I had assumed. "What do these people have in common?" Holmes asked. I examined the list. Nothing immediately stood out. They travelled on the railway. Astonishing. I ignored the sarcasm. "I see no other connection." "Because you're looking at individuals." He tapped the paper. "Look at families." That changed everything. Several surnames appeared repeatedly. Generations, parents, children, relatives. Entire family lines. My confusion deepened. "What does that mean?" Holmes smiled. "It means the railway wasn't transporting passengers." "Then what was it transporting?" His answer came quietly. "Identities." For several moments I simply stared. The word made no sense. "What do you mean, identities?" Holmes picked up a file. "Consider." He opened it. "This passenger supposedly departed London in 1888. Yes. Yet records place him elsewhere under a different name 6 months later. Another file. Another passenger. Same pattern. Then another. And another. Each case revealed discrepancies. New names. New lives. New histories. Gradually the truth emerged. The railway had served as something extraordinary. A mechanism. A system. A means by which people vanished. Not through murder. Not through kidnapping. Through reinvention. My pulse quickened. "Good heavens!" Holmes nodded. "Exactly. The secret railway enabled individuals to disappear from society, legally dead, socially forgotten, reborn elsewhere under entirely new identities. A vast hidden enterprise, operating beneath London's nose. For years, perhaps decades, I sank into a chair, Why? Many reasons. Holmes began pacing. Some sought escape, others protection, others opportunity. His expression darkened, and some undoubtedly used it for criminal purposes. The scope of the operation seemed staggering. Suddenly, Eleanor's involvement appeared far less mysterious. She had discovered something enormous, something capable of altering countless lives. Yet one question remained. Who controls it? Holmes stopped. The director. The title lingered ominously. We knew almost nothing about the individual, only that others obeyed him, feared him, and protected him. Yet Holmes appeared increasingly certain. I have heard his voice before. Where? That is the difficulty. He resumed pacing. I cannot place it. Then came a knock. Mrs. Hudson entered carrying a telegram. Holmes opened it immediately. As he read, his eyes widened. What is it? He handed me the message. From Lestrade. Discovered information regarding director. Come immediately. An hour later we sat inside Scotland Yard. Lestrade appeared unusually pleased. A dangerous sign. Whenever Lestrade looked pleased, it generally meant he possessed information while misunderstanding its significance. I've found your director. Holmes raised an eyebrow. Have you? Indeed. The inspector produced a file. Name, Victor Halcombe. Occupation, financial consultant. Connections to multiple railway companies. Holmes examined the documents. At first glance, the case appeared compelling. Halcombe possessed influence, money, access, opportunity, everything necessary. Yet Holmes's expression remained unchanged. Finally, he closed the file. No. Lestrade blinked. No? No. The inspector frowned. What do you mean, no? I mean Victor Halcombe is not our director. Lestrade looked exasperated. Why not? Holmes tossed the file onto the desk. Because he is too visible. The inspector stared. Too visible? Precisely. Holmes folded his arms. The director constructed a secret organization that operated undetected for years. Yes, he survives through invisibility. Naturally. Therefore, he would never occupy a position attracting scrutiny. Lestrade groaned. Then who is he? Holmes smiled faintly. Someone nobody notices. The answer proved frustratingly typical. Yet before Lestrade could protest further, another officer entered hurriedly. Inspector. Yes? We've received a report. The officer handed over a document. Lestrade scanned it. His expression changed immediately. What now? Holmes asked. A disturbance at the docks. Docks? The inspector nodded. Warehouse workers observed unusual activity. When? Last night. My pulse quickened. The transfer, the scheduled movement, tomorrow. Everything seemed converging. Holmes stood instantly. We're going. The docks presented a grim landscape of warehouses, cranes, and narrow waterways. Fog drifted across the river. Labourers moved among cargo shipments. Everything appeared ordinary. Yet Holmes immediately sensed otherwise. Here, he pointed toward a warehouse near the water. The building appeared abandoned, yet fresh wheel marks covered the ground outside. Recent activity, significant activity. Inside, we found evidence almost immediately. Crates, shipping manifests, packing materials, all connected to the secret railway. But the true discovery waited upstairs. A small office overlooked the warehouse floor. Within stood a desk, a safe, and a framed photograph. Holmes froze. What is it? He picked up the photograph carefully. For a moment he simply stared, then handed it to me. The image showed three individuals, a younger Sir Malcolm Ashcroft, an unidentified man, and a young woman, dark-haired, confident, intelligent, Eleanor's mother. I looked up sharply. What does this mean? Holmes's face had become pale, not frightened, astonished. A rare distinction. Everything. He searched the desk frantically. Documents scattered everywhere. Then he found what he wanted. A letter, old, yellowed with age. The signature at the bottom immediately caught my eye. Eleanor's mother. The contents explained everything, or nearly everything. Years earlier, she had discovered the railway. Not accidentally, deliberately. She had investigated it, infiltrated it, attempted to expose it, then abruptly vanished from the records. The room felt suddenly cold. Eleanor followed her mother's trail. Yes, Holmes spoke softly. That's why she joined them, to discover what happened. The realization struck me with tremendous force. Everything fit. The hidden visits, the secret notes, the investigations. Eleanor had not worked for the railway. She had infiltrated it, exactly as her mother had done. And now she faced the same danger. Then Holmes discovered one final document, a personnel record, old, nearly forgotten. The name printed at the top caused him to become completely motionless. I had never seen such an expression upon his face. Shock, genuine shock. What is it? For several moments he could not answer. Finally he handed me the paper. I read the name, then felt the blood drain from my face. Sir Malcolm Ashcroft. Position, Assistant Director. The room fell utterly silent. The implication was horrifying. Our client, the man who hired us, the man searching for Eleanor, the grieving uncle. For years, he had occupied a senior position within the secret railway. My hands trembled slightly. No, Holmes's voice was grim. Yes, but why hire us? An excellent question. My thoughts raced. Nothing made sense. If Sir Malcolm belonged to the organization, why seek Sherlock Holmes? Why expose himself? Why begin the investigation? Holmes appeared equally troubled, because there was only one explanation, and neither of us liked it. Watson, yes? His gaze remained fixed upon the personnel file. I believe Sir Malcolm fears something. What? For the first time since the case began, uncertainty entered Holmes's voice. The director. Outside, a ship's horn echoed across the river. The sound seemed strangely distant, because suddenly the case had changed once again. The conspiracy stretched deeper than imagined. Eleanor's mother had investigated it. Sir Malcolm had helped run it. And somewhere above them both stood the mysterious director, a figure powerful enough to frighten even his own allies. As we prepared to leave the warehouse, Holmes paused beside the window. His eyes narrowed. Someone stood across the street, watching. A familiar figure, tall, well-dressed, calm, Julian Mercer. The moment our eyes met, he turned and disappeared into the fog. Holmes did not pursue him. Instead, he smiled. A slow, dangerous smile. "What is it?" I asked. He continued staring at the empty street. At last what? Holmes placed the personnel file inside his coat. I know where to find the director, and for the first time, I believed the end of the mystery was finally approaching, though neither of us yet understood how costly the truth would prove to be. Chapter 10. The Midnight Transfer. The day of the final passenger transfer arrived beneath a sky heavy with rain. London seemed subdued. The streets glistened beneath a steady drizzle. Fog drifted across the Thames. And somewhere within that vast city, hidden beneath ordinary routines and respectable appearances, an organization prepared for a movement important enough to kill for. Sherlock Holmes spent the entire day making preparations. He wrote letters, dispatched telegrams, consulted maps, met briefly with Lestrade, then disappeared for several hours without explanation. When he finally returned to Baker Street shortly after 8 o'clock that evening, he appeared transformed. His clothing was different. His posture altered. Even his mannerisms had changed. For a moment I barely recognized him. "Good heavens!" Holmes smiled. "The disguise passes inspection?" "It certainly does." He adjusted his spectacles. "Excellent. What exactly are we doing tonight?" His expression became serious. "We are attending the transfer." I stared. "As participants?" "If possible." And if not, then as spectators. The answer offered little reassurance. Yet experience had taught me that Holmes generally possessed a plan. Whether that plan possessed any regard for personal safety remained another matter entirely. Shortly before midnight, we arrived near the hidden railway station. The area surrounding the abandoned tunnel appeared unusually active. Men moved through the fog. Carriages arrived and departed. Signals flashed intermittently from concealed positions. The entire operation seemed coordinated with military precision. Holmes observed everything. The transfer is significant. You've said that before. Tonight I understand why. His eyes followed a passing carriage. Because this transfer is not routine. What is it then? He looked toward the tunnel entrance. The end of something. The remark struck me as oddly ominous. Before I could question him further, a figure emerged from the shadows. Tall, elegant, familiar. Julian Mercer. He approached calmly, as though expecting us, as though our presence had been arranged, which perhaps it had. For several seconds nobody spoke. Then Mercer inclined his head. "Mr. Holmes." "Mr. Mercer." Rain tapped softly against nearby stone. Mercer's expression remained composed. Yet I detected strain beneath the surface. Fatigue, concern, possibly guilt. "I wondered when we'd meet again," Holmes said. So did I. The exchange possessed a curious quality. Neither man seemed surprised, almost as though an inevitable confrontation had finally arrived. Holmes folded his arms. "How long have you worked for the railway?" Mercer smiled faintly. "Long enough. Long enough to help Eleanor infiltrate it." The smile vanished. Silence followed. Then Mercer nodded. My pulse quickened. At last, truth. "At least part of it." "You knew?" I asked. "From the beginning." Mercer's voice sounded tired. "We entered together. The revelation struck like a hammer. Eleanor had not acted alone. Julian Mercer had assisted her, worked beside her, risked himself alongside her. Suddenly, many contradictions resolved themselves. The formal language, the half-truths, the evasions. Not deception born from guilt. Deception born from protection." Holmes nodded slowly. "I suspected as much." Mercer looked surprised. "When?" "The photograph." "Which photograph?" "The one inscribed to Eleanor." Recognition flickered across Mercer's face. Holmes continued. "The message was not romantic. No. It was instructional." "Yes. Trust the timetable, not the station." Mercer sighed. "The railway taught us that." For several moments rain filled the silence. Then Holmes asked the question that mattered most. "Where is Eleanor?" Mercer's expression hardened. "Alive." Relief washed through me, but only briefly, because Mercer did not appear relieved. He appeared worried. "Deeply worried. She's in danger." "Yes." From the director. Mercer hesitated, then answered. "Among others." Holmes studied him carefully. "You fear Sir Malcolm." The response proved immediate. "Everyone fears Sir Malcolm." That answer stunned me. "Impossible." Mercer laughed bitterly. "Is it?" The sound carried no amusement, only exhaustion. "You still believe he's frightened of the director?" Holmes remained silent. Mercer's gaze sharpened. "Mr. Holmes." "Yes? The director is real, indeed. But he hasn't controlled the railway in years." A chill passed through me. Holmes's expression did not change. Yet I knew immediately that the statement mattered enormously. "Explain." Mercer looked toward the tunnel. "The director built the organization." "Yes." "He created the system." "Yes." "He established the railway." Mercer's voice darkened. "Then Sir Malcolm took it from him." The words seemed impossible. Yet suddenly dozens of scattered clues aligned. The fear, the lies, the contradictions, the missing information. Everything. Holmes spoke quietly. The assistant director became the director. Mercer nodded. Years ago. The rain intensified. For several moments nobody moved. Then Mercer produced something from his coat. A folded document. He handed it to Holmes. What is this? The proof. Holmes opened it. His eyes moved rapidly across the page, then stopped. For the first time that evening, genuine surprise crossed his face. I looked over his shoulder. The document contained internal correspondence, authorizations, orders, signatures, and one name repeated throughout: Sir Malcolm Ashcroft, not assistant director, director, for nearly 6 years. My stomach tightened. The realization felt enormous. Our client, the grieving uncle, the concerned guardian, the man who requested Holmes's help, the mastermind, or at least one of them. "Why hire me?" Holmes asked. Mercer answered immediately, "Because Eleanor disappeared." The simplicity of the response struck me. "Explain." "She found something." Mercer's voice lowered. "Something Sir Malcolm never expected." "What?" Mercer hesitated, then looked directly at Holmes. "The original director." Silence followed. Absolute silence. Even the rain seemed distant. Holmes's eyes narrowed. "Alive?" "Yes." My pulse quickened. The true director still lived. Somewhere. Hidden. Watching. Waiting. The implications were staggering. Before Holmes could ask another question, a whistle echoed through the darkness. Long, low, powerful. The transfer signal. Mercer's face changed immediately. "It's starting." Without another word, he turned. "Wait." Mercer stopped. Holmes stepped forward. "One final question." Mercer looked back. The voice I heard in the underground office. Recognition flickered across Mercer's face. "Yes." "Whose was it?" For several moments Mercer remained silent. Then he answered, "The man you're about to meet." And with that, he disappeared into the fog. The hidden station below resembled a hive of activity. Passengers waited along the platform, dozens of them, some nervous, some excited, some frightened. Each carried small luggage. Each appeared prepared for departure. The secret railway was moving people once more, perhaps for the final time. Holmes and I observed from concealment. Then suddenly the crowd parted. A new figure appeared. The reaction proved immediate. Respect, fear, obedience. Every person present seemed aware of his importance. The man walked slowly beneath the blue lantern. Tall, silver-haired, immaculately dressed, confident, authoritative. I felt my breath catch, because I recognized him instantly, not from this case, not from any investigation, but from the warehouse photograph. The unidentified man standing beside Eleanor's mother, the third figure, the forgotten figure, the original director, alive, after all these years. Holmes stared. His eyes widened slightly. Then came the most astonishing moment of the entire investigation. The director looked directly toward our hiding place, straight toward us, and smiled. Not surprised, not alarmed, expectant, as though he had known we would come, as though he had been waiting. Then he spoke. His voice echoed across the station. Clear, calm, unmistakable. "Good evening, Mr. Holmes." The sound struck me like lightning. I understood instantly why Holmes had found it familiar, why the voice haunted him, why he could not place it. Because we had heard it before, many times. Recently, very recently. Holmes stepped from concealment. His expression had become unreadable. The director's smile widened. At last. Holmes nodded slowly. Indeed. The hidden station fell silent. Every eye turned toward them. The detective, the director, the confrontation the entire mystery had been building toward. And then Holmes spoke the words that left me utterly astonished. "Good evening." He paused, then revealed the name that changed everything. Dr. Nathaniel Graves. My heart nearly stopped. Graves. The surname, Leonard Graves, the murdered railway inspector. The connection became instantly obvious. The director was not merely alive, he was Leonard Graves' father. And somehow, impossibly, He stood at the center of the entire mystery. The old man's smile faded slightly, not from fear, from recognition, because he understood something. Holmes had finally solved the puzzle, or most of it. Yet as I looked around the station, one question remained unanswered, the most important question of all. Where was Eleanor Ashcroft, and would we find her before the transfer began? Chapter 11. The Director's Confession. I have often remarked that the most dramatic moments in an investigation rarely resemble the theatrical scenes imagined by popular fiction. Truth does not generally reveal itself amid gunfire, collapsing buildings, or desperate chases. More often, it emerges quietly, a sentence, a confession, a single fact placed beside another. Yet there are exceptions. The confrontation between Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Nathaniel Graves beneath the hidden station remains one of those exceptions. The underground platform had fallen completely silent. Passengers stood motionless. Railway workers watched nervously. Even the steam drifting from the locomotive seemed strangely subdued. All attention focused upon the two men facing one another beneath the blue lantern, Holmes and the original director. For several moments neither spoke. Then Dr. Graves smiled faintly. I wondered how long it would take. Holmes folded his arms. Longer than it should have. A rare admission. I dislike making it. That produced the first genuine laugh I had heard from the old man. It was not the laugh of a criminal mastermind, nor of a tyrant. It sounded weary, almost sad. Mr. Holmes, he said quietly, you are remarkably difficult to deceive. Holmes glanced toward the waiting train. And yet someone managed it. The old man's eyes darkened. Yes. A heavy silence followed. Then Holmes asked the question that had haunted the case from the beginning. Where is Eleanor Ashcroft? Dr. Graves looked toward one of the stationary carriages. Safe? Alive? Yes. Relief surged through me. Yet Holmes remained cautious. You expect me to accept your word? No. The director nodded toward the train. Then see for yourself. The carriage door opened. A figure stepped onto the platform. For a moment I scarcely recognized her, not because she appeared different, but because she appeared stronger than expected. Eleanor Ashcroft walked calmly toward us, not restrained, not frightened, not injured. Her expression reflected exhaustion rather than fear. When she saw Holmes, a faint smile touched her face. Mr. Holmes, Eleanor. The young woman stopped several feet away. I apologize for involving you. The statement startled me. You involved us deliberately. She nodded. Eventually. Holmes's eyes narrowed. Explain. Eleanor glanced toward Dr. Graves. The old man gave a slight nod. Permission. Trust. Something passed silently between them. Then Eleanor turned back toward us. The disappearance was real. Yes, but not in the way everyone assumed. Holmes remained silent. I boarded the train voluntarily. We know. I entered the railway organization voluntarily. We know that as well. A shadow crossed her face. But I did not expect murder. The platform grew still again. Leonard Graves, the railway inspector, the first victim. Eleanor lowered her eyes briefly. He tried to help me. Holmes's expression softened slightly. And it cost him his life. Yes. For several moments nobody spoke. Then Holmes shifted his attention toward Dr. Graves. Your son. The old man's face tightened. A father's grief. Old, perhaps, yet still raw. He discovered what Sir Malcolm was doing. Holmes nodded. And attempted to expose it. Yes. The director's voice became quieter. My son believed truth mattered. A pause followed. So did Eleanor. The connection became obvious. Both had threatened Sir Malcolm's plans. Both had threatened Sir Malcolm's plans. One had survived, one had not. Yet the central mystery remained unsolved. Holmes addressed it immediately. What is the true purpose of the railway? Dr. Graves looked around the station. The hidden platform, the waiting passengers, the train. the tunnels, the secret world he had created. When he finally spoke, his voice carried profound sadness. It was never intended for criminals. Holmes waited. Nor spies, nor fugitives. The old man gestured toward the passengers. It was created for victims. I frowned. Victims? Dr. Graves continued. Women escaping violent husbands. Families fleeing dangerous circumstances. Witnesses requiring protection. People trapped by powerful enemies. The platform seemed transformed by his words. The secret railway no longer resembled a criminal enterprise. Instead, it appeared something else entirely. A hidden refuge, a sanctuary, a means of escape. The director smiled sadly. Victorian society offers remarkably few second chances. Holmes nodded slowly. So you built one? Yes. The old man's eyes drifted toward the locomotive. The railway gave people new beginnings. Suddenly, countless mysteries became clear. The identity changes, the passenger records, the secrecy, everything fit. What happened? Holmes asked. Dr. Graves laughed bitterly. The same thing that happens to many noble ideas. His expression hardened. Someone discovered how to profit from them. The answer required no explanation. Sir Malcolm, the assistant director, the ambitious subordinate, the man who saw opportunity where others saw purpose. The director continued. At first he merely expanded operations, then altered them, then corrupted them. His voice darkened further. Eventually he controlled them. The passengers watched silently. Many seemed familiar with the story already. Perhaps they had lived through parts of it. Perhaps they had suffered because of it. What changes? Holmes asked. Dr. Graves's answer came immediately. Blackmail. A murmur passed through the platform. Extortion. Coercion. Financial manipulation. The railway became a machine, not for protection, but for power. The old man looked tired suddenly. Very old. I tried to stop him. What happened? I failed. A simple statement, yet one carrying years of regret. Holmes studied him carefully. You disappeared. Yes. Why? The director smiled faintly. Because dead men are difficult to hunt. The answer carried grim logic. By allowing the world to believe he had vanished, he survived, watched, waited, prepared, and now, apparently, returned. But one mystery remained. Perhaps the most personal mystery of all. Holmes spoke quietly. Eleanor's mother. At once the platform fell silent. Even Eleanor looked tense. The question mattered deeply. The director closed his eyes briefly, then answered, She was the bravest person I ever met. Eleanor's breath caught. The old man continued. She discovered Sir Malcolm's corruption before anyone else. She gathered evidence. She planned to expose him. Hope flickered across Eleanor's face. What happened? The director's expression became sorrowful. She escaped. For a moment, nobody understood. Then Eleanor whispered, Escaped? Yes. The old man smiled gently. Your mother survived. The words struck like thunder. Eleanor staggered backward. Tears filled her eyes instantly. No. Yes. You mean? She lives. I shall never forget that moment. Months of fear, years of uncertainty, a lifetime of grief, shattered by a single revelation. Eleanor covered her mouth, unable to speak, unable even to breathe properly. Dr. Graves nodded. She lives under another name. The railway had saved her, hidden her, protected her, exactly as it had protected countless others. Holmes remained unusually quiet, perhaps because he understood the significance, perhaps because he recognized that some mysteries deserve hopeful endings. Yet the old man's expression remained troubled, because the story was not over, not even close. There is a problem, he said. Holmes nodded. Sir Malcolm. Yes. The director looked toward the tunnel entrance. He knows we are here. The words settled over the platform like a shadow. Passengers exchanged nervous glances. Workers stiffened. The atmosphere changed instantly. Danger had returned. Real danger. Immediate danger. Then, as though summoned by the very mention of his name, a distant whistle echoed through the tunnels. Not the railway whistle, something else. A signal, an agreed-upon warning. The director's face hardened. "They've arrived." Holmes turned. "Who?" The answer came immediately. "Sir Malcolm's men." Almost at once, another sound followed. Footsteps, dozens of them, approaching rapidly through the darkness. The passengers began moving. Workers hurried toward positions. The hidden station transformed into a fortress preparing for siege. And somewhere within the approaching shadows waited the man who had orchestrated nearly every tragedy connected to the case. Sir Malcolm Ashcroft, our client, our liar, our betrayer, the true master of the corrupted railway. Holmes's eyes gleamed. For the first time in days, every piece stood in place. The clues, the lies, the murders, the disappearances, the hidden train, the blue lantern, everything. The final confrontation had arrived, and before the night ended, one of two men would control the future of the railway: the director, or Sir Malcolm Ashcroft. Chapter 12. The Siege of the Blue Lantern. The first shots echoed through the tunnels less than 2 minutes after Dr. Graves delivered his warning. The sound rolled through the underground station like thunder. Passengers cried out. Workers rushed into position. Lantern light flickered across brick walls as men hurried toward defensive points established long before our arrival. It became immediately apparent that this was not the first time the hidden railway had faced danger. Preparations existed. Plans existed. Contingencies existed. The old director had anticipated conflict, perhaps for years. Holmes, meanwhile, appeared strangely calm. The situation around us bordered on chaos, yet he stood beneath the blue lantern with the composure of a man attending an afternoon concert. I have often noted that danger sharpened Holmes rather than disturbed him. Tonight proved no exception. Another shot rang out. Closer. A bullet struck brick somewhere beyond the platform. Fragments scattered across the tracks. Passengers ducked instinctively. Eleanor remained beside Dr. Graves. Neither appeared frightened. Concerned, certainly, but not surprised. The realization unsettled me. They had expected this confrontation. Perhaps they had been preparing for it as long as Sir Malcolm had. "Watson," Holmes's voice cut through the confusion. "Yes?" "Observe the passengers." I stared at him. "Observe the passengers." "Precisely." Another gunshot echoed nearby. I confess my attention remained focused upon more immediate concerns. Nevertheless, I obeyed. The waiting passengers clustered near the train. Families, workers, elderly travellers, women with children, nothing unusual. Then I noticed something. They're not running. Exactly. Holmes smiled. Most people confronted by gunfire seek escape. These people did not. They remained near the train, near the platform, near the director, as though they trusted him completely. The observation seemed oddly significant. Then Holmes turned toward Dr. Graves. "How many entrances?" The old man answered immediately. "3. Good. Why?" Holmes's smile widened slightly. "Because Sir Malcolm expects one." For the first time, genuine amusement appeared in the director's eyes. "I see." I did not yet. But experience suggested Holmes had already begun constructing a trap. The attack intensified. Men emerged from the tunnel entrances, armed, organized, disciplined. At their center stood a familiar figure, tall, elegant, silver-haired, Sir Malcolm Ashcroft. The sight produced a strange sensation. Only days earlier, the man had sat comfortably in Baker Street, requesting our assistance. Now he advanced through the underground station like a conquering general. The contrast was astonishing. He moved with complete confidence, no hesitation, no uncertainty, no trace of the worried uncle we had first encountered. That man had never existed. This was the real Sir Malcolm, the architect of deception, the manipulator, the strategist, the director in all but name. He halted roughly 20 yards from the platform. The attack ceased immediately. Silence followed. Sir Malcolm surveyed the station calmly. Then his eyes settled upon Dr. Graves. A faint smile appeared. Still alive. The old director nodded. To your continuing disappointment. The exchange possessed remarkable hostility, not theatrical hatred, something colder, older, the resentment of men whose conflict spanned decades. Sir Malcolm's gaze shifted to Eleanor, to Holmes, finally to me. Mr. Holmes. Holmes inclined his head. Sir Malcolm, you have been extremely troublesome. Holmes smiled politely. I receive that criticism often. A few passengers laughed nervously. Sir Malcolm ignored them. Instead, he focused upon the hidden train, the railway, the station, everything. I offered you a simple missing person investigation. Indeed, you should have accepted it. Holmes folded his arms. I did. For the first time, irritation flickered across Sir Malcolm's face. Only briefly, yet it was there. The great manipulator disliked losing control of conversations. Holmes excelled at taking control away. What do you want? Dr. Graves asked. Sir Malcolm looked almost surprised. What I have always wanted. Power? No. Wealth? No. His expression hardened. Order. The word echoed strangely through the station. Order. Not greed, not ambition. Order. Sir Malcolm continued. The railway became too dangerous under your leadership. Dr. Graves laughed. A fascinating accusation. You allowed anyone access. I protected people. You created instability. The argument seemed genuine, not merely strategic. Both men believed themselves correct, which made the situation considerably more dangerous, because true believers often justify terrible actions. Holmes observed quietly, listening, analyzing, waiting. Then he spoke. You murdered Leonard Graves. The accusation shattered the debate instantly. Silence followed. Sir Malcolm's expression did not change, not even slightly, which in itself was revealing. You have evidence? No. Then why ask? Holmes smiled faintly. Because innocent men deny accusations. The answer landed perfectly, a subtle trap, and Sir Malcolm walked directly into it. For the briefest moment, anger flashed across his face, gone almost instantly. Yet enough. More than enough. Dr. Graves saw it too. The old man's eyes darkened. The truth required no confession. Then something unexpected occurred. Eleanor stepped forward. The movement startled everyone, including Holmes, including Sir Malcolm. For several seconds nobody spoke. The young woman faced her uncle directly. The man who had raised her, protected her, lied to her, destroyed lives, and possibly murdered others. Why? She asked. The question seemed simple, yet carried enormous weight. Why corrupt the railway? Why betray the director? Why destroy families? Why kill? Sir Malcolm studied her carefully. When he finally answered, his voice sounded almost sincere. Because your mother was wrong. Eleanor froze. The words struck visibly. My mother? Yes. The station fell silent once more. Sir Malcolm's gaze softened slightly. Not much, just enough to make the moment uncomfortable. She believed people deserved second chances. Yes, she believed everyone could be trusted. His expression hardened. She was mistaken. Eleanor shook her head. No. Look around you. Sir Malcolm gestured toward the passengers. Criminals, liars, runaways, frauds. Dr. Graves stepped forward angrily. But Eleanor raised a hand, stopping him. Something had changed in her expression. A realization, a certainty. She looked suddenly very much like the woman in the photograph. Very much like her mother. "You still don't understand." Sir Malcolm frowned. "Understand what?" The answer came quietly. The railway was never about escape. Confusion flickered across his face. Then Eleanor smiled sadly. It was about hope. For a moment, nobody spoke. The sentence seemed absurdly simple, yet somehow devastating, because Sir Malcolm had spent years understanding systems, power, control, money, but perhaps not people. The realization unsettled him visibly, and Holmes noticed. Of course he noticed. He notices everything. Then Holmes made his move, abruptly, without warning. "My dear Sir Malcolm." Every eye turned toward him. The detective reached into his coat and withdrew a bundle of papers. Passenger records, financial documents, correspondence, evidence. The evidence we had gathered throughout the investigation. Sir Malcolm's expression darkened instantly. "You found them?" "Indeed." Holmes smiled. "Along with several other interesting items." A pause. Then, "Lestrade should arrive shortly." The effect proved immediate. Several of Sir Malcolm's followers exchanged nervous glances. The police, evidence, exposure. Those threats frightened them more than bullets. Sir Malcolm, however, merely laughed. A cold laugh. "Bluffing." "Am I?" Holmes's tone remained casual, dangerously casual. The older man hesitated. Just briefly. Then something happened that transformed the entire confrontation. A whistle echoed from one of the distant tunnels. Not Sir Malcolm's signal, not the railway signal, something entirely different. Several of Sir Malcolm's men looked startled. One actually turned pale. Then came another whistle, closer, followed by voices, many voices, approaching rapidly. Sir Malcolm's confidence vanished, not entirely, but enough. Holmes smiled, a genuine smile this time, the smile of a man whose trap had finally closed. "You see," he said quietly, "I wasn't bluffing." The tunnel erupted with activity. Lanterns, footsteps, commands. And at their center emerged Inspector Lestrade, accompanied by dozens of officers. Scotland Yard had arrived. The station exploded into confusion. Some men surrendered immediately. Others attempted escape. Several ran toward the tunnels. Police pursued them instantly. The carefully balanced conflict collapsed within seconds. Sir Malcolm stared, not at Lestrade, at Holmes. The realization had finally arrived. The detective had anticipated everything, prepared everything, engineered everything. And now the conspiracy was beginning to crumble. Yet even then, Holmes's expression remained troubled, because one mystery still remained unsolved. One final piece still sat outside the puzzle. And until Holmes understood that final piece, the case was not truly finished. Not yet, not even close. As police flooded the station and Sir Malcolm slowly realized defeat had become inevitable, Holmes turned toward Dr. Graves. The old director met his gaze. Neither spoke, yet I sensed both men understood the same thing. The battle was ending, but the mystery itself still held one last secret, and somewhere within that secret lay the true answer to the case of the woman who boarded a train that never existed. Chapter 13. The Last Missing Clue. Many observers imagine that the conclusion of an investigation arrives at the moment a criminal is captured. Nothing could be further from the truth. Arrests conclude police work. They do not necessarily conclude mysteries. Indeed, some of Sherlock Holmes' most difficult cases continued long after the culprit had been identified. This proved particularly true of the affair of the woman who boarded a train that never existed. For while Sir Malcolm Ashcroft had been exposed, his organization dismantled, and his authority destroyed, one stubborn inconsistency remained. One fact refused to fit. One detail continued to trouble Holmes. And when something troubled Holmes, it generally troubled me as well. 3 days after the siege of the hidden station, we sat once more in the familiar comfort of Baker Street. Rain tapped softly against the windows. The fire burned pleasantly. London resumed its ordinary rhythm. Yet Holmes remained dissatisfied. He lounged upon the sofa with closed eyes. A violin rested nearby. Several newspapers lay untouched upon the table. The posture suggested relaxation. I knew better. His mind was working furiously. At last I set aside my medical journal. "You are troubled." His eyes opened. Slightly. "Because of Sir Malcolm?" "No." "The railway?" "No." "Eleanor?" "Again, no." I sighed. "Then what remains?" Holmes sat upright. "The beginning." That answer puzzled me. "The beginning of what?" "The case." I frowned. "What about it?" Holmes rose and crossed to the fireplace. "Everything now makes sense." "Yes." "Eleanor infiltrated the railway." "Yes." "Her mother survived." "Yes." "Sir Malcolm corrupted the organization." "Yes." I nodded impatiently. "So, what troubles you?" Holmes stopped pacing. "The train." I stared. "The train?" "Precisely." For several moments neither of us spoke. Then understanding slowly dawned. Good heavens, he was right. The mystery began with a train that supposedly did not exist. Yet now we knew the train did exist. Very much so. Therefore the original puzzle remained unresolved. Why had every witness described it incorrectly? Why had railway records failed to mention it? Why had the entire affair appeared impossible? Holmes smiled faintly. "You see the problem." "Yes, the train was real." "Indeed. Then why construct the illusion that it wasn't?" Holmes nodded. "The final question." Later that afternoon, Eleanor Ashcroft arrived at Baker Street. She appeared transformed. The strain of recent weeks had not vanished entirely, yet hope had returned. The knowledge that her mother still lived seemed to have altered her profoundly. Holmes greeted her warmly, by his standards at least, which meant he nodded once and offered tea. After several minutes of conversation, Holmes asked, "Eleanor, when did you first suspect your uncle?" The young woman considered carefully. "Not until shortly before my disappearance." "Why then?" "Because I found a letter." Holmes became attentive immediately. "What letter?" "A personal letter written years earlier." "From whom?" "My mother." That certainly captured our interest. Eleanor reached into her handbag. I brought it. The document appeared old, folded repeatedly, clearly treasured. Holmes opened it carefully. The handwriting belonged to Eleanor's mother. The contents discussed the railway, the director, the dangers of corruption. Much of it confirmed what we already knew. Then Holmes froze. "What is it?" I asked. He did not answer. Instead, he reread a particular paragraph, then a third time. His expression changed instantly. The satisfaction of understanding, the rarest and most dangerous expression Sherlock Holmes possessed. "My dear Watson," I recognized the tone immediately. He had solved it. "What?" Holmes handed me the letter. A single sentence had been underlined. "Never trust the platform assigned to you. Trust only the timetable." For several seconds I simply stared. Then everything struck me at once. The inscription, the photograph, Julian Mercer's message. Trust the timetable, not the station. The phrase had never referred to metaphor. It referred to railway procedure. Actual railway procedure. Good heavens! Holmes smiled. Exactly. Eleanor looked bewildered. "What does it mean?" Holmes stood. "It means your uncle planned the deception long before your disappearance." That evening, Holmes requested meetings with several railway officials. One in particular proved useful. A scheduling supervisor named Alfred Whitmore. The gentleman arrived shortly after 7. Holmes immediately began questioning him. "Mr. Whitmore, can a train arrive at a platform different from its published assignment?" The supervisor nodded. Certainly. How? Operational necessity. Maintenance. Traffic congestion. Holmes leaned forward. Would passengers notice? Rarely. My pulse quickened. Holmes continued. What about records? Records would show the official assignment, not the actual one. Generally not. The answer landed like a hammer. The mystery finally unraveled. After Whitmore departed, Holmes explained. The train existed. Yes. The railway existed. Yes. The witnesses were truthful. Yes. He smiled. But they observed the wrong platform. For a moment I struggled to comprehend. Then understanding arrived. The hidden railway train had never departed from Platform 9, at least not physically. The platform assignment itself had been falsified. The train arrived elsewhere. Passengers were redirected. Records altered. Witnesses confused. The entire impossible mystery depended upon administrative deception, not supernatural disappearance, not hallucination, not impossible events, merely paperwork. Glorious, infuriating paperwork. I laughed aloud. Holmes looked pleased. As mysteries go, it possesses elegance. Remarkable elegance. Every witness told the truth. Every record told the truth. Yet neither described the same event. The contradiction created the illusion. The illusion created the mystery. And the mystery concealed the conspiracy. Yet one final question remained. Perhaps the most important of all. Why had Sir Malcolm hired Sherlock Holmes? The answer seemed obvious at first. Protection, manipulation, misdirection. Yet Holmes disagreed. Too simple. He stood near the window, watching London beyond the glass. Sir Malcolm was intelligent. Certainly. He understood risk. Yes. Therefore he would never voluntarily introduce me into the situation, unless absolutely necessary. I frowned. Then why do it? Holmes turned. Because he was frightened. Of the director? No. That answer surprised me. Holmes smiled faintly. Of Eleanor? Eleanor? The young woman looked equally astonished. Me? Yes. He folded his arms. Your uncle knew you possessed evidence. Some. He knew you inherited your mother's determination. A faint smile touched Eleanor's face. Probably. He knew you were getting close. Holmes' gaze sharpened, and he knew he could no longer predict your actions. The conclusion emerged naturally. Sir Malcolm had hired Holmes not to find Eleanor, but to find what Eleanor had discovered. The detective had been intended as a tool, an unwitting instrument, a bloodhound following a trail. The irony proved magnificent. Instead, Holmes uncovered the entire conspiracy. I laughed. Eleanor laughed. Even Holmes appeared mildly amused. A rare achievement. The following morning brought news that Sir Malcolm had confessed to numerous crimes. Not all. Men like Sir Malcolm rarely confessed completely. But enough. Enough to secure conviction. Enough to dismantle the organization he corrupted. Enough to restore the railway's original purpose. Dr. Graves, meanwhile, prepared to disappear once more. Not from fear, from preference. He belonged to the shadows, to hidden roots and second chances. Perhaps he always would. As for Eleanor, plans had already begun for a reunion many years overdue. Her mother awaited, alive, safe, and finally ready to return. The case seemed complete, perfectly complete. Yet that evening, while sitting beside the fire, Holmes surprised me. Watson, yes? Do you know what aspect of this affair interests me most? I considered. The railway? No. The conspiracy? No. Eleanor's investigation? Again, no. Holmes smiled. The train? I groaned. Still? Always. He gestured toward the flames. Think of it. A train hidden beneath London. A network operating for decades. Entire lives transformed. His eyes reflected the firelight. A remarkable achievement. I laughed. Most people would focus on the crimes. Most people lack imagination. The answer was so entirely Holmes that I could not help smiling. Outside, London settled into evening. The mystery stood solved, the guilty exposed, the innocent protected. And yet I sensed one final chapter remained unwritten, because certain stories do not truly end when the mystery is solved. They end when the people involved finally choose their future. And Eleanor Ashcroft's future was about to begin. Chapter 14. The Departure of the Blue Lantern. In the years that followed my association with Sherlock Holmes, many clients came and went. Some left grateful, others departed bewildered. A few remained convinced that Holmes possessed powers bordering upon the supernatural. He encouraged none of these impressions. Indeed, nothing irritated him more than the suggestion that his successes resulted from anything other than observation, logic, and disciplined reasoning. The final chapter of the affair of the woman who boarded a train that never existed provided a perfect example. For although the mystery had been solved in practical terms, Holmes insisted upon one final gathering. "Every proper case deserves an ending," he informed me. "Most endings occur naturally. Most endings are unsatisfactory." And so, on a cool autumn afternoon, a small group assembled in the sitting room of 221B Baker Street. Present were Inspector Lestrade, Eleanor Ashcroft, Julian Mercer, Dr. Nathaniel Graves, and, naturally, myself. Outside, London moved beneath a sky streaked with pale clouds. Inside, anticipation filled the room. Holmes stood beside the fireplace. A violin rested upon the mantel. Several documents lay neatly arranged upon the table. Everything suggested preparation, method, structure, the trademarks of Sherlock Holmes. Lestrade cleared his throat. "Are we here for a lecture?" "Almost certainly," said Holmes. The inspector sighed heavily. Eleanor laughed softly. The tension eased. Then Holmes began. "When this case first arrived at Baker Street, it appeared impossible." He looked toward the assembled guests. A woman entered Charing Cross Station, purchased a ticket, waited upon platform 9, boarded a train, and disappeared. Holmes folded his arms. The difficulty was simple. There was no train. He paused. "At least according to official records." Lestrade nodded. "Precisely." Holmes smiled faintly. The mistake made by Scotland Yard was understandable. "I knew there would be a mistake. Several, actually," the inspector groaned. Holmes continued. "The witnesses were believed unreliable. The records were believed reliable." His eyes sharpened. The opposite proved closer to the truth. A faint smile touched Dr. Graves' face. The old director already knew the answer. The others listened carefully. Holmes paced slowly. "The train existed. The witnesses saw it. The passengers boarded it. Everything happened exactly as described." He stopped. "The deception lay elsewhere." Julian Mercer nodded. "In the assignment." "Precisely." Holmes pointed toward the railway documents. "Platforms exist physically, but they also exist administratively." The distinction seemed subtle, yet it explained everything. The train departed from one location. The paperwork assigned it another. Consequently, every observer described reality, while every record described bureaucracy. Lestrade frowned. "That's absurd." "No," Holmes smiled. "It is brilliant." The room fell silent, because it truly had been brilliant. The entire impossible mystery depended upon the difference between what happened and what was documented. Nothing supernatural, nothing magical, only human manipulation. The finest mysteries often possess precisely that quality. Holmes moved to the next point. "Eleanor Ashcroft." She looked up. "When we began, everyone assumed you were the victim." Eleanor nodded. "So did I." "An understandable error." Holmes smiled slightly. "You were not a victim." "No, you were an investigator." A faint look of pride crossed her face. The detective continued. "Years earlier, Eleanor's mother discovered corruption within the railway. Before she could expose it, she vanished." He glanced toward Dr. Graves. though not in the manner commonly believed. The old director inclined his head. Holmes continued. Eleanor inherited both her mother's curiosity and her courage. Julian Mercer smiled. Stubbornness, too. Eleanor laughed. Definitely stubbornness. The warmth in the room felt refreshing after weeks of tension. Holmes resumed. She infiltrated the railway, gathered evidence, discovered Sir Malcolm's activities. His expression hardened slightly, and nearly paid for that discovery with her life. The room grew quiet again, because everyone understood how close the danger had truly come. Then Holmes addressed the central figure, Sir Malcolm Ashcroft. Though absent, his influence still lingered. The greatest deception in this affair was not the train, it was the man. Lestrade nodded. Agreed. Holmes picked up a document. Sir Malcolm presented himself as a worried guardian, a concerned uncle, a victim. He tossed the paper aside. In reality, he was none of those things. Dr. Graves' expression darkened. The old man had lost a son because of Sir Malcolm's ambition. No amount of justice could entirely repair such a wound. Holmes continued. He corrupted an organization founded upon protection, turned refuge into leverage, turned secrecy into power, turned hope into profit. The words hung heavily in the room. No one disagreed. At length Lestrade spoke. There's still one thing I don't understand. Holmes looked amused. Only one? The inspector ignored him. Why hire you? A fair question. The question. Holmes smiled. Fear. Lestrade frowned. Fear of what? Eleanor. The inspector looked astonished, as he had when Holmes first reached that conclusion. Holmes explained. Sir Malcolm knew she possessed information. He knew she was investigating. He knew he could no longer control events. His gaze shifted toward Eleanor. Most importantly, he knew she resembled her mother. A silence followed, not uncomfortable, reflective, because everyone understood what that meant. Courage can be inherited, so can determination. Sir Malcolm feared both. The formal explanation concluded shortly afterward. Lestrade departed first. Official duties awaited him. Julian Mercer left next, promising to return within the week. Dr. Graves prepared to leave as well, yet before doing so, he approached Eleanor. The old director seemed unusually uncertain. A curious sight. What happens now? Eleanor asked. Dr. Graves smiled gently. Now you meet your mother. For a moment nobody spoke. The sentence carried too much meaning, too much emotion, too many years. Then Eleanor nodded. A single tear escaped despite her efforts. Not grief, relief. The purest relief. I've waited a very long time. The old man's eyes softened. So has she. The reunion occurred 3 days later. I shall not attempt a detailed description. Some moments belong to those who experience them, not those who merely witness. Suffice it to say that Eleanor's mother proved very much alive, older, wiser, marked by years of separation, yet unmistakably herself. The resemblance between mother and daughter was extraordinary. At one point, Eleanor laughed. At the exact same moment her mother did. The same expression, the same gesture, the same spirit. And suddenly the lost years seemed slightly less tragic. Not erased. Nothing could erase them, but softened by hope, by survival, by love. Sometimes that is enough. Several weeks later I found Holmes seated beside the window of Baker Street. The case had concluded. The railway would continue under Dr. Graves' supervision, its original purpose restored. The guilty faced justice, the innocent moved forward. Everything had resolved as neatly as one could reasonably expect, yet Holmes appeared thoughtful. What occupies your mind? I asked. The blue lantern, I laughed aloud. Again? Again. He smiled faintly. Outside, evening settled across London. The symbol interests me. Why? Holmes looked toward the fading light. Because it represented something unusual. What? His answer came quietly. A choice. I frowned. A lantern? Indeed. He turned toward me. The railway offered people choices, new lives, new beginnings, second chances. His gaze drifted toward the city beyond. Those are rare things. For several moments neither of us spoke. Then Holmes stood. The mood passed instantly, as it always did. He reached for his violin, a familiar sign. The case was over. Completely over. At last. My dear Watson. Yes? I believe Mrs. Hudson mentioned correspondence from Vienna. A new client? Possibly. A spark appeared in his eyes. The spark that always appeared when another mystery approached. I shook my head. One case ends, and another begins. Holmes smiled. The world is obligingly mysterious. The violin rose beneath his chin. The first notes drifted through Baker Street. Outside, London carried on beneath gathering twilight. Inside, Sherlock Holmes had already begun looking toward the next puzzle. As for the woman who boarded a train that never existed, she discovered that the train had always existed. What never truly existed was the lie built around it. And like all lies, however clever, however elaborate, however carefully hidden, it eventually encountered Sherlock Holmes. The end.